Get 40% off Pod Practice t-shirts by visiting our Ko-fi shop. Enter promo code PRACTICEPLAYER, all caps. We also offer free shipping to the United States and now ship worldwide.
Over here at Pod Practice, we are excited to announce that we are partnering with Greatest Bag to provide you with all of your ultimate bag needs. If you're looking to get a new ultimate bag, head on over to greatestbag.com. And if you use code PODPRACTICE10, you will receive 10% off your purchase. Welcome to Season 3 of Pod Practice with Team USA player Quinn Finer, Team USA Grandmaster player Mikey Lunn, and myself, Alex Atkins. You can now find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and anywhere you listen to your podcasts. We want to keep growing the Pod Practice community, so reach out to us with your thoughts on IG and YouTube at podpractice_pod, or email us at show@podpracticepod.com. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
We recorded this episode with Felix in 2 separate sessions, so there is some repeat content. What I really enjoyed learning about Hex is that it's a principle-first offense, and even though Felix emphasizes forming triangles, the structure of the offense doesn't really matter. In traditional stack offenses, we often talk about the structure first, then we talk about how to attack and clear within that structure. In the second session, we did a better job of going over each hex principle, so I wanted to make sure to fit that part into the initial conversation to give more context later on. Those principles are: take the open pass, look for the return pass, turn infield after catching, follow your throw, play the way you face, spread out, stay active. We'll do our best to call out different sections of the conversation and provide some timestamps so you can skip around. We also recorded a bonus B Ultimate Playbook segment with Felix, watching some truck, Bravo, and machine film. So if you're at a screen, stick around to check that out.
Welcome back to another episode of Pod Practice. Today we are welcoming in Felix Shardlow, the owner and originator of Hive Ultimate. Felix, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I hear it's getting dark here, but it's getting light where you are.
Mm-hmm. But you know, the sun never sets in the British Empire. That's what I heard.
Yeah, for now at least.
Awesome. Well, yeah. So I think first, I just kind of want to talk about how Hive originated, kind of the story of you starting this ultimate adventure and just how it all started and where it came about.
Well, I started doing video frisbee stuff back in 2004, and I was making DVDs and selling DVDs of the European Championships and national championships and stuff like that. Basically copying Ulti Village. And then I got hired in 2016 to film at the Worlds in London, and I was on camera for that USA Japan game, and I was thinking, this is such a interesting strategical battle. I can't wait to watch this analysis and breakdown afterwards. And then after the event, nobody did any analysis or breakdown. And I was like, oh shit, I've got to be that guy that does that. So that video, I made a few videos about that, and one of them really, really took off.
Was it the Flash Poach one?
It was not the Flash Poach one, no. That one did pretty well.
Or the I'm nerding out. Is it where you analyze each turnover?
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah. I definitely watched those. Those were good. Yeah,
there was only 8 turnovers, and there's something that I could say about each one that was kind of interesting. And a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that before." Little things like when people are playing in stadiums, you get the occasional unexplained drop, which can be explained by the background of the disc. You see the disc coming in, but if the background is all people in a crowd, it's much actually harder to distinguish the disc, and so you get these weird drops sometimes happen. If you triangulate, you can work it out. Oh, it's the background. So little things like that, kind of on every turnover. So that video got popular, and then when COVID happened, I started live streaming and stuff, and brought Noah into what was Felix Ultimate at the time. And once it was more than just me, then it was okay, we need to rename this, and so it became Hive Ultimate.
How many people are working under Hive right now?
We got like three kind of main like management kind of people. Myself, Noah Brinkworth, and Lou Burgess. And then we have like we collaborate with people as well. So there's a Colombian, Simon Ramirez. We're doing a few videos with him right now. And yeah, people chip in and help out. We have like sometimes we need to like find lots of examples of one particular thing happening, and we like put these bounties out in Discord, being like, find us a clip of this. You know, you get like $10 or whatever. So like, yeah, we try and get as many people kind of contributing as possible.
That's sweet. So you have a Discord specifically for Hive.
Yeah.
So Hex, I think from my perspective, the biggest misconception is that most people, when they hear Hex, think of it as a structure and shape, and not just like a way of playing offense or principles around playing offense.
Yeah.
Would you say that's accurate? And could you just kind of give a rundown of the origin of all these ideas?
Yeah, I think it's accurate. Like, which means it's just a bad name, right? Because the name is the shape. And that leads people to think that the shape's super important, but it's one of the least important things compared to like stack offenses, I guess. But then compared to other flow and motion offenses, the Hex name isn't actually that bad, because it does indicate that there's value in that shape, and you can run flow offenses and stuff from whatever. Yeah. So, I mean, do you want to chat about like principles and things? Like what are your kind of understandings of the principles?
Kind of like, I'd be interested in like, the story of how the idea originated, like when you started to think about it and just the growth of it as an offense.
All right. So 2009 won Europeans with Brighton, my local club, and we were like, we were quite well known for being unstructured and throwing a lot of hammers. And we like dominated the mixed final 115-6, I think. And so we're feeling good, went to Worlds, and then lost badly. I almost quit the game because like I felt helpless to do anything with the team, because it was just one person. Whenever a game would get tight, this person would just huck it to the end zone and it'd be 50-50. And it was like, okay, I have no influence anymore. And so that was annoying. Even though like when I played previously, like when I first started, my biggest strength was I could run fast, jump high, and lay out, right? And then I became like a thrower, and I could like put the disc anywhere. But then that's evolved again, basically. And so I was going to quit after 2010, and then GB trials came up, and I was like, I'll see how far I came with this sport. I'll just have a weekend playing against and with some of the best players in the country. And I made it onto the team, like not like scraped on as well. I was just like, oh, actually, okay, no, I'm one of the better players here. So like, sweet, I made it onto the team. And then went to Clapham as well, because there weren't any other Brighton players on the team on GB. So went to Clapham so I could play with some of them. Came back after a year, and like basically in Clapham I didn't have a good time. I found it really boring, like so many set plays. I turned up to a practice, and the guy, like, I got full respect for the leadership and stuff, but the captain was like, okay, if we don't innovate, then we stagnate. So then I was like, okay, this sounds exciting. What's this going to be? And it was just another set of play from horizontal. It was just like, these people run here, and then this person runs here. And I'm like, oh my God, is this really like the best it gets?
Innovation that excites.
So then when I came back to Brighton, then I had, a captive audience in a way. Like people were very keen to learn what I'd learned going away, and I didn't really go that deep into it, other than like there's a lot of mentality stuff that I think was important. And instead, I had this idea of Hex. Now the idea of Hex came in between, like it came during the European Football Championship in like 2011, 2012, I think it was. And I was watching Spain play, right? And they were like passing the ball around really quick. If they had they wouldn't really run with the ball that much, right? Like they would have it, and then defender would come, and they'd just pass it out to someone else, and then they'd complete the triangle, and it'd go back to the initial guy, and he'd run past the defender. And I was like, there must be a way that we can play like this. We can play Ultimate like this. And so then I thought about, okay, well, you've got the triangles, obviously. I thought the goalkeeper was quite important. So initially I had like a super dump kind of, in my mind, like being like, okay, there's got to be someone back there. So as soon as it gets like a bit tight downfield, then you can just like throw it all the way back and swing it around and stuff. And then it was a couple of days later, I was like, that goalkeeper should just be part of the formation, and then I drew the triangles out, and it all just went tink like that. And suddenly, like, there's this eureka moment where, like, it just formed a perfect hexagon. And I was like, oh, right, you all you need is the equal triangles, and they all fit perfectly together like this, So yeah, when the penny dropped like that, I was like, yeah, this could be interesting. This might work. And when I came back to Brighton, I was in a position where, like, I was coaching both universities in the town and the local club team, and like. I was one of the top players on that team as well, and everyone knew me and had known me for a decade, kind of thing, or like since they ever started playing. I taught most people how to play at the very beginning, and so it was like the perfect place for me to develop these ideas. I could teach beginners, I could teach the like Brighton team, who were like third best in the country behind Clapham and Chevron. And yeah, I remember we had like regionals in 2012, and yeah, the whole team, like, I'd explained it all to them, and then there's some footage of it where we're all like desperately shouting to each other about shape and about rotation and all this stuff that people hadn't been talking about before, and we're on the sideline just shouting really loud, and the other team's like, why don't we get any help with defense? And it's like, well, we're trying to help you, but like Brighton are just shouting really loudly on offense, so we can't really do anything. So yeah, and it just kind of went from there. We did it at regionals, we took it then to nationals, and like immediately we were playing at the same level as we were with the other offenses. We're getting the same results, and it was like, this is like an entirely new kind of system, and we're immediately hitting the same pace that we were. And plus, everybody like loved it, everyone enjoyed it. 90%. So yeah, that's kind of where it came from. I've got to pay some like. Tip my hat over to Frank as well, Frank Huguenard, because like I did read his stuff like years and years before. That it didn't ever pop up in my mind when I was going through that process in 2012, 2013. But like it was definitely somewhere in my mind, like I definitely like, read all that stuff, and they definitely will have influenced some of the things that I was coming up with.
I think that's why you interest me so much, is because I want to see what other ways there are to play. And in the U.S., as a coach and player, for a couple decades, it's the time it takes to change anything. It's oftentimes seasons long, like multiple seasons, where like in Colorado, for instance, and with Bravo and with Summit, and honestly CU now, Mama Bird, we have been known for running a certain kind of defense. And I know for our originator TK, it took a long time for him to get the proper buy-in to make any changes. When you first were trying to introduce this with your local club, what was the friction? What was the friction like at that point?
Yeah, there's definitely like that 10%, right? Basically, and one of those was like one of our best players, and he was like very skeptical of it, and kind of practices would go in a bad way sometimes when he would like start shouting kind of against it, kind of thing. There was definitely some of that, but because I was in such a fortunate situation of like I'd taught almost all those people kind of how to play the game years previously,
you had their trust.
Yeah, there was already kind of a lot of kind of trust there. And then I guess it's the case of communicating the ideas in a way that everyone can get behind it. One of the things I did was help people feel like it was their own as well. So like, originally I was like, it's called Hexagon, and people were like, that's too descriptive. Like it gives away what we're doing, which obviously it doesn't really, but it gives it away. So then they were like, let's call it something that rhymes with Hexagon. So originally it was called Mexican Offense. And like it was just a little thing, being like, sure, we can rename it, whatever. Like just so that then that one person then feels like it's theirs, you know. So that's another person that's like bought in fully.
Totally. So I guess let's maybe move on to a little bit of like what are the principles and what were the easiest ones for people to just latch onto, and what were the ones I think that you think were the hardest for people to buy into?
Basic principles are, you know, hit the return pass. Look for the return pass actually. So that's one that I talk about first nowadays. Is
meaning if Kins throws to Quinn, that Quinn's first read is back to Kins.
Yeah, in most situations, you should look to then get the disc back. But also it means then when Kins throws to Quinn, he's looking for the return pass himself. So after the throw, then going for that return. And if both players are looking for it, then it's very easy to happen. Like it's very likely to happen. That's something that I think would change like a lot of teams. Basically, if all of their players just had that, like as soon as they throw, they're looking for it back. As soon as they catch, they're looking to give it back. You know, and that it's not like a golden rule because there's kind of play the way you face. Is kind of related and almost like a higher priority, which is kind of self-explanatory. But yeah, that's kind of like if there's someone open in front of you, take the pass. If they're almost open, then like fake, you know, and then look for a new one. And then if there's not someone open in front of you, yeah, then look back to the previous thrower, and yeah, by that time they're probably free. You know, if they're also applying that principle of looking for the return pass.
We're switching over to session 2 to cover the 7 principles of Hex Offense.
So looking at this 7 principles for flow offense that I'm sharing, it's not definitive, of course. These are just the ones that kind of like came to mind, or like with a bit of research, I was like, yeah, these seem like good kind of fundamentals. We chatted about take the open pass and look for the return pass and stuff. What other ones there like stand out to you?
Besides, the one that stood out was turn infield after catching. I just feel like that's not, you know, it's a little different, but I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think that's kind of spread fairly quick as well. Like I've seen some people doing it, and then when you start doing it as well, it feels so good, and you get so many more opportunities that like once you start, you don't really stop. So yeah, it could go viral.
Can you dive into that one a little bit? Like what does it mean exactly?
So like if you're making just a standard like 45-degree-ish cut under the open side, then when you catch a frisbee, instead of say you're cutting for like backhand, so you're running from like left to right diagonally forward. If you when you catch, there's a difference between turning to your left to then look across the middle of the field and then down towards the end zone or whatever, or turning to your right where you look across the sideline and then down towards like the down line to the end zone. There's a difference between those two, basically. Sometimes you're like guided to go one way or the other because like the throw's slightly behind you, so that encourages you to turn like left, and then slightly in front of you, you have to kind of bend with it, and it leads you around that way. But if you can choose, then choosing to like turn it back in a way where you can see the previous thrower and you can immediately see teammates of yours, and also the kind of infield space where it's really good to get the disc anyway. Doing that doesn't disadvantage you, and it advantages you in a lot of ways, like being able to find quick, easy passes.
Yeah, I really like that it allows you to see exactly what you were describing, and it makes me think of Japanese players, how they do it sometimes, and they find those opportunities to shoot the crossfield huck. And it's something that we've experimented with a little bit with Kins. Would you say medium resistance, high resistance, or is it just because we're not great at explaining the situations?
I don't even think there was resistance. I think it's just like how long you end up doing it and stuff. I mean, I can only speak for myself. I like the idea. We never committed it enough
fully.
time for it to like really become something that we do as
Another
like
thing,
a principle.
yeah, I think you're right. You're right. Another thing that I like about it a lot, playing against a lot of US teams, they tend to, on a trap sideline, they'll go flat for the first few seconds before wrapping back around to go to really like hard trap you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it allows you to beat that mark more quickly,
Yeah,
or make them wrap way sooner than they want to.
you could say that, like, because that flat to then stopping the around is effective because it mimics what throwers traditionally do. They traditionally look down there about round. I had a weird phrase for this, disrupting the temporal pattern, right? As a defense, disrupting what they do, like as time goes by, like as soon as they catch a disc, they normally look here, they normally look there, and then constructing your defense around kind of the stall count and modifying it depending on when that stall is. But yeah, like the counter to that then is turning inwards to threaten the thing that they're giving up immediately. But I think even regardless of the defense, the most balanced thing to do is to turn inwards as well, and the thing that's most likely to sustain flow as well.
Yeah, and I think it's just like it's so normal. I think, you know, I can see situations where you want to turn infield and you want to turn to look down the sideline, but I think like we're really, it's way more common that people just do the turn down the sideline, even when it doesn't necessarily make sense with like the flow of their body and stuff, you know? Like, I think, you know, if I'm catching an upline going towards the sideline, I'm not going to like immediately turn in. I'll probably look for that like one, you know, continue. Like if I have a nice power position, whatever, I'm going to continue to look down the sideline.
Well,
but
yeah,
like, I think the under, like you're saying, like that when you're catching an under and like your momentum or whatever is just taking you more towards, it kind of goes with the, what's the other
Play the
one
way you face.
Yeah. Play the way you face.
That's what I was going to
Like,
say.
it's like, don't, catching an under, don't like go look up, feel like whatever. I mean, it's situational, but yeah, I think especially like, you know, teams have a big focus of wanting to get it off the sideline. So this just helps you do it.
Yeah.
It facilitates a give go so much as well. Like if you're dribbling and you've done a give go with one or two people, it's like so obvious then when you pass to someone and their habit takes them to an outward turn because suddenly the dribble stops because like instead of getting free immediately and being free immediately, you have to get free like a little bit further downfield, like half a second later, and that's exactly what the defense are expecting.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a small moment at we had Summit Open tryouts this past weekend, and I played a few points in sevens, and I basically I was trying to give go with a player he's basically only played at pickup levels, and I basically following exactly some of the principles you have. So as the thrower, I was looking for the return pass. So I was running. He was facing me. So it made sense for him to play the way he faced. And I was going to get power position. But he actually, I think it's because he's, you know, a less experienced player with less intuition. He really struggled to actually throw the pass. He did eventually throw it to me. But I feel like it was like this ingrainedness of like, it's not time for me to give it back to you. It's time for me to look up field for 5 seconds and try to rip it to the end zone.
Mm-hmm. And I like what you were saying, Felix, about like the flow of, because I think that's like what a lot of this is about is like things things become normal. And then a really good idea to be effective is like just start breaking out of that norm. Like I even noticed a couple of really good players this weekend at the World Games tryouts, just, you know, catching a disc and doing something that's like a little bit unorthodox. Maybe it's a little bit faster or they're turning a different way or something like that. And it just kind of breaks like the normal rhythm that you start to see a lot of maybe at whatever level you're playing. And that just becomes so effective. Like when you start to do those things a little bit different, regardless of it's because like for me, it's not about like, this is the right thing. This is the wrong thing. It's like this context of, well, this is just what's normal. So this is what defenses and the habits that people are having. So let's do something that's a little bit different. and will, break those habits
Yeah.
and become super effective.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, any like offensive plan where everyone's on the same page has quite a high kind of chance of success, right? Like even snake in the grass, and other like stupid plays where you run around in a circle and then everyone runs in a different direction or whatever. Like if you get everyone on the same page, it's like, oh, actually, that was better than what we were doing. But like I feel like there's like we're in like a good time right now where like doing the weird thing is actually doing what's normal in other sports, and so like it's, like regardless of it just being different, like I also reckon it's just like gonna set you up nicely for doing whatever else.
Yeah, maybe we should just. Well, I'll read off each of your 7 principles, and we can choose whether or not to dive into each of one of them. But when you said it's like normal in other sports, the first thing that comes to mind is spread out, right? Like literally every other sport is like space and pace right now.
Right.
Does anything come to mind for you, Kins, when you read spread out and the strict structures that a lot of our teams tend to play with?
Yeah, but I kind of like to think how those structures kind of evolved, and how kind of the purpose of vert stack, one of it was to reduce the number of throws in a point, because people's disc skills were way down, and now that disc skills are evolved, then the strategy needs to kind of evolve with it to play to that skill now. And then the vertical stack for ages, and then the very slight change of just rotating it horizontally, rather than like so then it's another stack, but it's actually like a 3-4, which then gets into more like kind of how other sports define structure, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I maintain that like I could give a fuck about if you say ho or vert or anything, because I think that like once you start actually, once you're in the middle of an offensive point, like I don't give a fuck what the structure really looks like. Like the way I see those things is just as like a starting, like beginning the point, timeout, like how people are setting up to start. And I will say I thought it was really annoying at tryouts this weekend was like we were doing vert, but like to start the points, we would run a vert stack. And so like the disc would be centered and we'd have our vert stack like right in front of the disc. And I just feel like that's for me as a cutter, it's such a limiting way to start. Like, I mean, what's nice is you can go left or right. Like that's how you can kind of like juke out that's what the defender has to like worry about. But I like, especially I like to go deep and I like to throw it deep. So I prefer if like the options are out and under. I just think it's very limiting with like the space to only be able to go like to the left or the right. But yeah, so that's what I think about like the starting positions. And that's why I like this kind of more like
Principle based,
because I think if people are getting too caught up in a vertical or a horizontal or like whatever while you're in the middle of a point, I just think there's so many things that you can be like worrying about that go like trying to create a structure like mid play isn't the best concern.
Yeah, I mean, if you applied these principles to horizontal, then you're kind of like 80% of the way there, to doing like pure kind of hex or whatever with structure. Without structure, it's. I mean, everyone's just running around all over the place anyway, and taking the opportunities as they come, right?
Totally.
There are just like slight different. Like if you're calling horizontal, then people at the moment they don't have that flow mindset as much. But then if you say like hex, then they're like, oh, now I need to like move the disc faster. I need to do this, and it's like you could probably do that in your other system, but then that's not 100% true because horizontal does kind of like get you in those one-on-one situation, like deep situations where it's like, okay, let's give this person the disc for a few seconds because they know any one of these cutters could go deep, like, so it does kind of lean towards that. Like the end zone is pretty big and it is easy to score.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I always like, when my dad would tell me about like the difference between, whenever I was in camp, my dad was talking about like the difference between horizontal and vert. Like the vert was just like, okay, you open up these two spaces on the sides to cut in. If you're doing horizontal, you open up the space underneath and behind so you can go deep. So it's like a little. The other thing that I think is just like, what needs to happen more if for something like this to become more popular is like the other thing that I thought was kind of interesting at tryouts was like it's such an emphasis, and it makes sense because it's tryouts. You're maybe not going to coordinate like too much, whatever. But like there's such an emphasis on just being like you're on your person, and you're just tight on them all point. Like you're just gonna clamp them and do everything. Whereas like playing different ways of defense, like being more heads up, it can be very effective. Like I think there's a time and place for both. But I feel like when you just have the mindset of like, we just have to stay tight to the person that you're on and only playing person, then like those offenses are a little bit more successful because you just try to make as big a space as you can. And like the 5 people that aren't doing anything, since their defender is just trying to stay close to them, like it doesn't really matter. Whereas like if you start to evolve into more like zone-ish concepts, then it doesn't really work.
And Felix, you actually, you have a good, you mentioned this in your stop truck video, I think. You talk about helping the helper, basically, like when someone rotates as a defender to guard an open person, that right now in the state of where we are in the sport, generally the next person doesn't know where to go, or like there's a miscommunication. They're like both for a moment trying to guard the same person instead of like a coordinated, like I'm going to leave my guy to guard Kins' guy because Kins is getting roasted up line or something, and then Felix comes down to help with mine, or maybe Kins just switches over. In Colorado, it's second nature to like backfield roll, for instance, but there's a lot of other situations that I think we have so much room for improvement, especially when it's more than just 2 people switching.
Yeah, for sure. And like surround situations and stuff, there's so much to calculate. For me, it keeps it interesting. Most fun I've had is playing like fully coordinated team defense.
Totally.
But I think to Alex's point, I think the 1-to-1 defense is definitely responsible for like stack lasting for so long, basically. Like it's kind of nuts that a lot of players, even at very high levels, are essentially at the whim of the other team, and they can just be led to anywhere on the field, even if it's just in a little clump on the sideline, And yeah, things are changing now, but like we got to that point. We went so far down that rabbit hole that all the defenders were like right over by the sideline at one point, and it's like, well, obviously that's not going to be the best thing to defend the entire field. They try and punish the fact that the other team are bunched up together on the sideline. It's a terrible place to be if you get punished for it. If you don't punish them for it, it's a great thing to be. It's a great like position to be in.
Yeah, and I think it's about finding the balance of like we're going to work really hard on defense and also improve the strategy, because I feel like when you say you want to like do other things, like the response is like, no, we're just going to like run harder. And it just feels like we can do both. Like we can work really hard on defense and also improve like the tactics to which we're playing. Like, especially, I mean, I love the like, I just feel like, especially now when you know what spaces people are trying to attack. And I think this is the other thing with like, it becomes really hard when the disc is moving very quickly because the spaces that you're attacking change so quickly. But like when teams, for example, are just, it should be, if you're playing like a team coordinated defense, it should be very hard for a team to just move it up the open sideline, because at a certain point, if they're not swinging it off the sideline, the only places they can go are like either under or deep down that sideline. So like there should be defenders there, should not allow that. You know what I mean? And then once the disc swings, like maybe you're adapting because the spaces are changing, but like, it's just interesting to me, especially because, like when you go to like a World Games trial, like this is like a very high level of the sport. And the things that we're like you do seem very basic. And I just think that like Ultimate, it would be nice to get to a point where Ultimate is, thinking a little bit more than just like we're going to run hard. And yeah.
And like redefining the fundamentals as well, like, instead of being like, okay, you have to learn really good 1-to-1 defense instead of even think about switching. Like that, it's not really the right order to do things. Like people should be thrown in there taught to like play defense as a team and figure half that stuff out, and then getting really good to one-on-one defense is like a development from that.
Right, because there's times where you're going to be on that island and you have to play one-on-one defense, but then it's really about being able to recognize, like, okay, right now is the time. Like, I'm in the reset space. There's no one that can help me besides potentially the mark. So like, I'm just going to do what I need to do to play solid individual defense. Or is it a time that I'm like in the stack with other people and we can communicate, like, if you go there, I'll go here, and we can take away, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I have communication for that. Like if I'm like just marking one person and people around me are like doing switches or like trying to, guard multiple people, but I just want to stick with one person, then I say one, right? Being like, I'm marking one person. If the person I'm near goes near someone else, right? And so then I see that I can play 2v2, then I say two, and then the other person, the other defender, should say two as well. So you can do that up to 3, 4, 5 or whatever. And if you go back to one, then it's just like, don't try and work with me. I'm shutting this guy down at the moment.
That's a good quick tool.
To your point about the like working hard or playing smart, the hardest I've ever worked has been playing like team defense, right? Because you're working your legs so hard, it's unpredictable. You still have to go at like full speed a lot of the time, but like you're changing direction, and you have to decide when you're changing direction. You have to communicate. You have to have be eyes up all the time. Like so, like physically and mentally, it's even harder sometimes than just marking 1-to-1. The thing is, like sometimes, like some players will like start poaching, right? And it's like, oh yeah, no, I thought we were doing a zone, and it's like, it's not a zone. We're just looking for switches, And
we're
then it's
looking to be opportunistic, totally.
Someone's like covering all the deeps, and
right, and
when like
pointing,
yeah, exactly. And when that happens, then they're essentially poaching and not playing team defense really. But when that happens, that causes other poachers to happen, because then like, that guy kind of half covered by my deep defender.
That's interesting.
So it's like has a cascading effect. So as a coach, when I'm trying to introduce this stuff, I try and find those players who haven't got that it's not like a zone. Yeah, the ones who are playing it like a zone, because those are the ones that cause it all to kind of degrade into just poaching.
I want to move over to stay active, but I one quick story, and that is the 2014 Bravo team. I've talked to Bob Cryer about this quite a bit. Especially their O-line was very heady, and they were able to switch proactively after a turn. I remember seeing like Jimmy would get just some catch blocks leaving his guy. And he said that it wasn't necessarily something that they practiced strictly. It was just they were very intelligent players, and they had the freedom to do so. So Felix, if you do ever want to have more footage to watch, I would actually recommend some of the 2014 Bravo teams.
Okay, cool.
Ryan Farrell is also a player on that team, and Ryan, the one thing that I always say about Ryan is he had an uncanny ability to leave his player to guard somebody else without getting beat by the player he left. Yeah, kind of like Mansfield today.
Yeah, I was thinking about him. Yeah, and like Ali's mentioned mix. I feel like some smart help defense is even more useful in mixed. Like because it's like I played a lot of mixed, and as a thrower, you have to calculate multiple different speeds on the field at the same. Like all of a sudden, it's different to like everyone's roughly the same speed, and so then you have to be thinking like a lot more complex kind of way. And if it as a defender you can exploit that and be like, oh, they would have miscalculated here, then it's going to be a big advantage.
In basketball, you see offensive players hunting a specific switch at times. I don't know how much you watch basketball, Felix. A typical situation would be like a small trying to get a big to switch on him, so he has a quickness advantage.
Right, yeah.
So like Chris Paul, who's now an old man, but he would try to run some sort of pick and roll or something to get like a guy like Rudy Gobert on him. Rudy's a 7-foot kind of clunkier defender. He's an amazing rim protector, but not a very good space defender. and then they would isolate space, and Chris Paul could just use his agility to get around him and get a shot off, essentially.
So you can kind of like try and force the switch by cutting in a certain way or moving in a certain way on offense, so that then the defense have to switch. I'd be happy if ultimately got to that level.
I've always wanted to figure out how to do that in Frisbee.
Well, people don't switch enough. You can't rely on it.
Well, they do. There's switches. You know what I think? It's funny you bring it up, Mikey, because I was thinking about this also because I had a lot of thoughts like post tryouts. And the other one was just like, I don't think matchups are taken into consideration enough in like high-level ultimate. Like for me, for example, like a lot of the ways, because I think about like how, people play like video games too, but it's just a game. But like, a video game can be obvious because like if there's a mechanic that's like let's say it's like broken or whatever, it's just like overpowered in a video game. Like the best gamers, they find it and then they just fucking exploit the fuck out of it. You just exploit it, right? But like, that's because they want to win. But like that doesn't happen in Ultimate. Like you don't see people like trying to exploit mismatches or create those mismatches the way like I really think people could. Like I just think like, whether it's a short person on a tall person, vice versa or whatever, like a fat, like, I think like not only should you be like recognizing them, I think also, I mean, it's definitely in basketball, it's so easy. Like you run that pick and roll. Like the pick is such an easy way to force a switch. So it's a little bit harder in Ultimate because you really only see it in like the give goes or maybe sometimes if they're bracketing like in the deep space. But I just don't think it's like a really like valued thing. Like in my opinion, like because I'm a tall person, so I like think about this a lot. But like, and I know I've talked to you about it, Mikey. But like, I think when like there's like a really short person on a tall person, like I think that should be exploited. Like there should be a plan around trying to like create a situation where the defense is so fucked because there's like a clear mismatch like of height or something. And vice versa, like if there's a big person on a small person, like that small person should just like be like going crazy around the disc, trying to like completely use their agility, to their advantage. So I don't know. I think about that. And I think like the skill to throw up like a nice floaty catchable ball to a tall person who's being guarded by a short person, like that's a good skill. And I do think that there's a part of it in Ultimate that's like the culture. It's like not polite. You know what I mean? Like it's not like, I really think that is like a big part of it.
No, you're
like,
right. This makes me think of Kins because there was a practice Felix at this last fall where we had talked about this a little bit, trying to exploit matchups. And at practice, we had a couple words for identifying good matchups. And we had a player or two coming back from injury, maybe not in the best shape. And so that was the matchup we were trying to take advantage of. And later we got feedback from a teammate saying, I didn't really love that because it makes me feel like we're picking on someone or like making that person feel bad. And I'm sure he did this feedback was phrased a little bit more digestible, given like the whole broader team context and everything. But to your point, Kins, there is maybe a bit of politeness ingrained in Frisbee where people don't want to do that all the time.
Can't hurt people's feelings. Like it's like not good to point out like the fact that someone's not strong in a certain area. And it's a little more complicated on a team thing because like you are trying to build like people's confidence.
Yeah, you're trying to build their confidence.
Yeah, but that can be done as part of the game, right? Because like if the other team's trying to exploit that mismatch, then the team that's being exploited needs to like adapt as a team to negate that. Mm-hmm. Right, yeah. Like it's compatible. It's part of the game, and there is an answer to it, which doesn't involve going outside the game.
I totally agree.
Yeah,
and I just think like also then having the ability to do that. Like I think it's not easy depending on the conditions to necessarily throw. Just because I see that like this 6'6" person is being guarded by like a 5'8" person, like I still have to be able to throw the disc in a way that is going to be like you still have to create the situation where they can go deep. It's just one-on-one and it's sort of in flow. And then like also like the throw has to be, nice, catchable. Like there's just different ways to do it. So I think it's all like a skill that can be worked on. And I don't think it's something that's like that would be valued, enough. Like I think that kind of for me, it's like, and I know football teams do it, like other sports do it, but it's like you should be looking for those weaknesses as much as possible when you're playing another team and look to exploit them as much as you can.
Yeah, for sure. Like you shouldn't really need to draw the line anywhere if you're playing within the rules, like to that end. So something that came to mind whilst you're talking was the time when I've been on the field. Like you're always calculating stuff, but the time when I've like had the hardest calculations to do, and it's been like hurting my head to try and figure out what's going on the field, is when I'm trying to engineer a switch. Yeah, but normally it's we're playing defense and there's a mismatch, and I need because maybe we've switched in emergency and we're trying to re-switch back, because in that moment you're trying to look at where the other person is, where the other market of them is, the other offense, to try and figure out when you can safely switch. And so then you're also trying to figure out, okay, when am I going to leave my person here? Who's got the disc? How far can they throw? And then who they're throwing to next? Is the person they're throwing to next far enough away that I have time to engineer the switch? Is the other defender looking at me? There's just so many things to think about. And I'm sure putting yourself in those situations is how you learn. It's super hardcore, but trying to engineer a switch is so difficult that I think it teaches you a lot. And I sometimes run condition games. I always run condition games, but sometimes the condition is you have to actually switch, after 3 or 4 passes, but before the end of the point, you have to switch with a teammate.
That's a good one. I like that one. Okay. Shall we hit stay active? And I guess we'll hit each principle, and we don't have to talk in depth about any of them, but if anything comes to mind when we say one of them, let's dive into it. Stay active though. What does come to mind?
That thing where people just clear out and just put their heads down and clear out is prime time for defender to be useful and stop paying attention to the offense. In my opinion, if people are spreading out, then they're always a viable option for something. So just being ready for that, being ready for the pass is something which you kind of should take for granted, but I'd say a lot of players play traditionally who have their on and have their off, rather than just always being kind of on but not at 100%.
What do you think
difficult to guard if someone's always looking for the disc?
We in a side stack situation, a lot of times we'll have one our weakest player, quote unquote, or just the player that they've identified to just poach off of. Do you think that this would directly apply to that situation? How does that person stay active if they're being poached and far away from the disc?
I suppose these principles applying for other offenses, stay active. It feels like a lot of stack offenses kind of put you in the stack so that you can be inactive somewhere.
Inactive.
That's exactly what came to mind for me. Is we talk about staying active, but if you're there's a lot of times where there's just only so much activity you can have.
Well, I feel like what I think is that's the priorities are not being set correctly when people are teaching a side stack, for instance. If I'm in the side stack, as stack meat, as we like to call it, and Kins is poaching off of me, I do need to stay active in a way that occupies him. So I think the principle still applies. We often say bleed, or basically just reposition so you're either available immediately for a pass, or that defender has to come guard you. So I do like that principle quite a bit, no matter what the offense is.
No, yeah. I like it too. It's just it goes a little the staying active piece. If you're playing a side stack where you're really telling people to go wide and shallow, it kind of contradicts the get as far away from the space as you can. Like it can be hard to stay. I think that's where and I think this kind of talks to like the Felix's point about like the development piece where like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like you're telling people to stay active, but also if you're telling them to like, it's just this hard balance. And this is what I think about with offense. It's like you're kind of playing this game with the defense where like you want to create as much space as possible to attack into. Like that's the goal, is like if we could just have 5 players get in the back end zone corner and everyone was guarded, and you could create the biggest space to just play one-on-one. Okay, like that's what you would do. But obviously if you did that, the defense wouldn't like necessarily
I mean, this is why like I think it's so cool that you have the principles first over structure of the offense.
Yeah. Because I think structure, I'm with that. I think principles first. Structure is, to me, is just
so secondary.
I think it only really matters I think structure only really matters at the very beginning of the point, because you kind of need to tell people where to start. But then I think like the structure during the point is kind of just going to be a symptom of your principles and how you're playing. Like I guess for me, I don't worry too much about creating a structure during the point, like while you're playing offense.
Okay.
I'd like to have a few, like go
ahead.
I like to think about like making triangles nowadays. So, so like if I'm a reset or whatever, I'll try and like latch onto someone else so I can actually triangulate with them and the disc. And when everyone's spreading out, then the structure is obviously very, very loose, but you're still guided basically by the principles. So like if everyone's spread out and moving a bit, I don't want to move like towards somebody. It weirds me out when I'm playing and one of my teammates comes like right towards me and stands near me. For one, the defense can then switch or bracket you much, much easier. And then conversely, if I'm too disconnected from people, like if I'm too far away from people, I don't want to go further away. So like you do get kind of guided in the right, like there could be a whole nother set of principles, to be honest, about like where to kind of move when you're not actively cutting or whatever on offense.
Yeah, that's something that just came to mind. Like, how fluid do you see the people like in the hex when they're, like say you start in the hex, you start with the shape. Like, how fluid would you like have a team be with kind of where they are in any given moment?
I like it being very fluid. Yeah, right. I like mixing it up. I like sometimes like having the normal receivers actually field the pull, because then they give go with each other and then they pass it. Like one of them will just like bust off to the end zone, and then that's when then the usual handlers will actually then come under and then they'll have the disc handling it halfway or towards the opponent's brick mark. And I like people having the freedom to go anywhere. I mean, that's part of the thing of staying active is you don't necessarily have to be moving, but you have to be looking dangerous. And when you're in a side stack, then like 50% of the way you could run is off the field, so that's not dangerous. But then if you're spread and you've got connected players all around, you can literally like look in any direction. As soon as like, so when you're on like a point, a corner kind of thing in Hex, and you've always got like 3 people kind of connected to you, like not always, but if people are applying the principles and stuff, like you end up with about 3 people near you, like near-ish. And then if any of them move, that creates a space that then you can like move into. So basically, if you have your head up and you're looking around and you see this movement happening, it like draws you into that space. It's like the natural kind of thing to do. But the thing is, if you take all those opportunities that you get presented with, then you get like knackered. I've seen when masters try and play, I don't know if knackered is if you use that in US.
No, we don't.
It's gassed. You get gassed.
Yeah.
In masters, because they're so used to recognizing the opportunities, then like they get presented with all opportunities and they just take all the opportunities and then they're just completely exhausted. And it's like, okay, look, now that's cool, but like, you don't need to take all the opportunities. You can just chill, and if that space opens up, you don't have to go into it immediately. Someone else might. There's lots of other connected people.
Yeah, because figuring out who the people are going to be farther away from the disc, because I feel like that's one thing about spreading out is like you need people to have the discipline to spread out a little bit more. But then I guess that's where you can kind of play to the like people's strengths where, depending on their skill set, maybe someone who is wanting to like score more goals and stuff will be the one like farther away and deeper and the more.
Yeah. Well, the ones with the mismatches get closer and get the disc in their hands, or or go deep if it's that kind of mismatch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That's true. I want to like coach a middle school team now and just like,
I know.
play around with it because I'm so ready. Like it's so much more exciting. Maybe I'm just tired from this vert stack shit that we were doing all weekend. I felt like I was like bad. It felt so interesting.
Designing drills for like this new thing or this new kind of either the movement or the positioning or whatever. Designing drills to kind of like train players, and that is very, very interesting. Like every week I run a session. I'm designing a new drill, introducing a new thing, because there's a lot of things which old drills do which people kind of take for granted, but it's actually like you're already working from a bad situation. Like the drills are mostly designed to get out of situations where something's gone wrong already. At the very base of it, just starting with a disc in your hand stood still for 3 seconds is something that you want to avoid, right? And yet it seems like at the beginning of every rep and every drill, you're standing still with the disc in your hands for 3 seconds, right?
Yeah, the one situation that I can imagine is unavoidable to be in it a lot at times is trapped on a sideline because a team turned it over out of bounds. But that's a good point. It's like, like being proactive about it's like medicine, and maybe I don't know what medicine's like in the UK, but in the US, everything is reactionary. Like we wait until someone gets sick to treat them instead of being
right. We give them the pill. Like let's focus on the lifestyle. Let's focus on the offense before we try to give them some antidepressants or whatever.
Yeah.
No,
so it's getting to the root of it, isn't it?
And I feel like it's hard to make drills because a lot of drills that we do are like patterns, and with it being such a new idea, like at least like me personally, it's hard to come up with like concepts of patterns that you would see over and over again that you'd want to drill, because I don't know. Like I can think of a million different offensive flows and patterns than ways to drill them in how I play Frisbee, because I've done it a million times. But where like for something like this, like, I feel like I just kind of want to let people like go crazy with it and then see what happens, and then start to create the drill, see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. Just like I've thought about doing things like just laying out what I have done, actually laying out triangles of cones and just kind of seeing where people run and if there's any kind of correlation, and trying to figure out then what we should, try and like drill or whatever. And it can be a lot that like it's hard to kind of put a finger on what you're like, how to actually achieve something. So for example, you want to train break throws so you can break, the vertical stack kind of thing, and boom, you can just have someone cutting break side, you throw the thing, trained it, brilliant. You want to train like sustaining flow. Then it's like, okay, so first we have to put people in a flow situation, and it has to be game realistic, and then they have to have these decisions they make, which will either sustain flow or halt flow. It's it's a completely different ball game, so to speak.
What do you think about positions? Because I know you kind of like soccer was kind of inspired you for this. Like do you have like loose? Would you like have loose positions for a team? Like, or is it just because I could imagine that could kind of help with certain things of like at least maybe beginning where you start and maybe certain roles that you have on the line. But then I also can imagine it being a little bit restrictive. But it's hard to know what amount of, like restrictions are good and too limiting and all that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like people like positions, and that might just be because that's what they're used to, or it might be because it helps them kind of make good spread shape or whatever without just having to kind of see where everyone is and react to it. They do like that, but I feel like it's not the best way to do it. Like I'm a fan of total football, which is the Dutch Johan Cruyff introducing.
I'm a big fan. I don't know much about football, but I've watched a lot of Johan Cruyff focused videos.
Wait, is he doing something different with the Dutch team?
He was, yeah.
Johan's
He was.
dead.
He's dead?
He's dead.
Yeah.
He's an icon in FIFA, so I
Pep
didn't know.
Guardiola's kind of his understudy. Yeah,
really?
protege.
Yeah, and so he kind of said, right, okay, well, you can move anywhere on the football field. You just need to fill in for each other. So this person, they can just go boom over there, but like keep an eye on the space and like someone else move over there. So he kind of did away with all positions, and I like that as an idea in Ultimate. At the moment, people like positions a lot. So
but so they would still have a starting position, but with the freedom to know that they could go to any space that as long as someone else fills it. Because that's what I was kind of thinking. Like with this is like you could have a starting position, but you know that you're allowed to go wherever, and people need to recognize that if you leave, because there's so many situations where like whatever. If like I can see if we're talking about like soccer where like you're the right back. And so you're on the right side of the field, whatever. But all of a sudden you kick it to the middle, you go for a give go, and you end up like, you're like attacking on like the left side or like in the center. And I feel like you want to allow for that kind of freedom, but also the team has to understand that, okay, the right back went forward, which means like this center midfielder might need to like the defensive midfielder might need to like drop back and a center back, or like the wing needs to like go back. And Texas it's just kind of like interesting. But I do feel like the positions could help, with that initial kind of like spacing and stuff. And then as the flow begins, it's like, okay, now we need to be able to be adapting.
Because repetition helps as well. Like if you have the same 7 on your O line, same 2 people field the ball, everyone sets up in relatively the same rough area, then over the course of a day, a tournament, then you get to know kind of like what to expect, what the different options look like. And you don't really need to talk about too many set of plays on the line and stuff because like you're all kind of quite familiar with what kind of might happen. And one of the advantages actually is that you don't have a set play. You don't have a defined plan.
I like that. How do you decide where people start initially? Like,
I normally call 2 backs and a hat, and then have the others just kind of cup around. So 2 then would be wing and 2 deep. But like if you break the pool, then I don't really like it being 2 backs that are like parallel to each other. So we try and like rotate a little bit. But now, if we're talking in very precise terms, but like something that could also be good if positions are good for now, but like maybe in the future they're not going to be the ideal thing. But then something that could come in is actually different roles, right? You can play a role without having a definite position, So you can have people whose focus is dribbling. You can have people whose focus is actually on the bigger throws or the overheads, so they're kind of like expansive looks. And then you can have people that are looking to catch those expansive looks. So like they kind of make your offense a little bit more kind of like multi-attacking without restricting.
And that makes sense. Like I could see the roles just being based on what people's strengths are. And I kind of like I like the idea of having the initial positions and then I like that both. Like you have this initial, and just like the way you're calling like to start the play. I mean, I feel like it just makes sense. Okay, you have to have people start in this, and they start in these positions based on what their roles and / their strengths are. But then as the play is going on, you allow everyone to have the flexibility to kind of go with the flow. And just understanding like what the priority spaces that people need to be filling are.
Yeah. It reminds me of the Hong Kong Open team. They played Hex the last few years, and they've started having the hat in the center catch the pool, right? So on the line they'll nominate 2 people, but they're not the 2 catching the pool. They're 2 people who are going to be downfield, and then everyone else is basically level with the disc all behind it. And it looks super weird, a pool coming in and there being like 5 people kind of like around it. But like as soon as they catch it, they've normally got like an easy pass like laterally, and then you've got 2 isolated people in the whole field, like downfield.
Yeah, that's really interesting too from a defensive standpoint. Like I wonder, like if I'm on O, I like it. I like it if it's well spaced because I have more isolation for my downfield people. And what I'm curious about is if there's a turnover. Have you ever noticed this, Felix? Do teams that are running Hex, do they tend to give up fewer fast break transition goals? Because I would imagine if you have more people kind of behind the disc, it's like in basketball again. you have people kind of retreating to help with those options,
Yeah, it
especially
makes
if there are
sense,
people
yeah.
behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, exactly. If you got your reset, behind the disc when it's on the sideline, then you're always going to have people deep of the disc if it turns over where it is. One of the hardest things about getting people to like play any role is the people that never handle, encouraging them to chill out near the disc or even go behind it and be comfortable there.
Yeah, because they just want to book it downfield.
Exactly. So inevitably, you get too many people downfield again, and like somewhat, like the thing to constantly drill in is like having to like rotate the shape back away from the sideline, or just encourage people to be behind the disc comfortable.
Okay, play the way you face. We've kind of covered that. Follow your throw, turn in field after catching. We've covered those, and those are, I think, are definitely crucial ones to play flow offense. Look for the return pass. So, is that as much of a cue for both the thrower and the receiver?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much equally as important for both.
And then take the open pass, regardless of field position, regardless of player. That one's interesting to me. Can we talk about situations where it may?
Yeah.
What's a situation where it may not be a good idea to take the open pass, or maybe lower priority? Is there a situation like that in your mind?
Yeah, yeah, there are like the obvious ones. When someone's going to be free deep, but someone's free under as well. And it's like, well, actually, if I just don't throw this under for a second, I can throw it deep. There are going to be quite a lot of situations like that.
Mm-hmm.
So like maybe, I mean, for development, obviously it makes a lot of sense. But that development can also be like part of a tournament. Getting people warmed up, getting them into the game. If it's like could do this, could do that kind of thing, I think even losing yards isn't that bad. Like I think people should like worry about that less and instead worry about flow stopping more. And that's kind of what this principle is about.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How about like a sideline situation?
You don't want to pass to the sideline, yeah.
Yeah, is that how high on the level of concern is that for you?
For me personally, probably not as high, but it definitely factors in. Like if I don't have a mark on, and then someone's free lateral towards the sideline, then it's kind of like, are we going to be able to make flow from there for a start? But then sometimes someone will be free there, and I will be able to make flow. Because if I'm free, in fact, if I don't have a mark on and someone's free there, yeah, and or just bounce it off them and reverse, the flow across the other way, or like you did the analysis of free shell, didn't you, where he like passed backwards, but then used it to then flow around to the other side of the field. Yeah, and that led actually to then what you were talking about last time as well, with like a bunch of flow passes and then flow stopping on the sideline. I thought about that a bit more. And I think with that, looking for the return pass, there is quite a bit of responsibility on the person that lasts through the disc to like generate the next option, like to either be free or to threaten something that makes other people free, right? Causes other defenders to worry about it.
Yeah, I go back and forth so much on how threatening a sideline situation it is. I mean, I will never stop teaching the idea that the sideline is a backboard because I don't want it to stop there. But I think when you combine all the principles together, it's probably pretty unlikely that you're going to be in a really dire situation. It's like, especially if I think looking for the return pass, because sometimes that means it's just a boom, boom, you bounce it right back. Or you create a really threatening give-go situation where someone can fill. And I think if a lot of these principles are taught from day one when kids are young, that their skills hopefully will not be at the point where like, holy shit, so-and-so has the disc on the sideline, what are we going to do? And it's not like the end of the world. And And then obviously everything has nuance. There's wind, there's weather, there's conditions that may factor in. But I do have faith. I think that taking the open pass, if it's to the sideline, can still be managed. I can definitely hear a lot of people that I know in my head, they would immediately counter like, well, we're going to design our defense to put you there and keep you there. And I think that's like all true. And it's just, that's offense and defense. That's the battle, right? You counter and counter back.
Mm-hmm. I mean, nothing is ever going to be like 100% true. But even like at the tryouts this weekend, people are like, I just want to hit the first open pass. Like, I think generally hitting the first open pass is a good idea. And then there's certainly situations where, but I think that's where it goes back to just like you play this kind of stuff, and the more those outlier situations arise, then the more more frequently you see them, then you're like, okay, well, in that situation, maybe we don't need to do it. But it's like, generally you should hit it's a good idea to hit the first open pass the majority of the time, I would say.
Yeah. And usually when you like, there's times where you're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have done that. I think they're normally going to the sideline or
usually sideline probably.
But the ones where you go behind or where you like bounce a few passes and you're like, is there any point to this? Normally they actually generate great stuff, like even if two people are unmarked and they just start passing to each other, bam, 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 bam. Quite often it's just like, okay, now we're going, a defender comes flying in and then they're beaten them.
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
That's fun as well.
Damn, this was a great combo. Like, we didn't even touch. We still could. I feel like we've kind of gotten a good chunk of meat here that I've.
We didn't even look at any video. That was the whole point.
You know what film we should watch with Felix sometime is that one game we tried to start running the 4-1-2 in the UFA a little bit, like against Los Angeles, like 2 years ago. It'd be kind of interesting to watch that with Felix sometime. Because what happened, Felix, was like the new pool rules in the UFA. And you're pulling from like 50 yards away. So
60, but yeah.
Is it 60?
Yeah, because it's an 80-yard field.
And it's only 20 up, 60 yards away. Is it really only 60? It feels so much shorter. But yeah, so anyway, the pulls were a lot closer. So you needed, and the field's also 53 yards wide. So you definitely need more designated pull catching, like people to field the pull. Like, you can't just have like one person do it. You need at least, I would say, like 3, like one on each sideline and in the middle. And so that kind of had me thinking more about like running something almost like initially like that's similar to this, where it's like you have 3 in the back, 1 in the middle, and like 3 downfield, or even if you had like 4 in the back, whatever. And so it just kind of started that whole thing. And I also like the idea of having more people behind the disc, I think that's really good.
Like Kins, this reminds me of actually. So one of the 7 principles is spread out. The one principle that's not on here actually that I've read or heard in your videos is stay connected.
It's
so
at the bottom
like
spread out, but I feel like maybe it should be the heading.
Say that one more time.
It's at the bottom of spread out, but I think maybe it should be.
Oh yeah, there it is. I see it. Yeah, it is there. Spread out.
These could definitely be improved. Like,
yeah, I think that part is crucial, because what happened to us, in addition to like some fluky turns, in my opinion, were we did not know how to stay connected. We could spread out, and then we would get the disc, on this 53 1/3 yard wide field, like towards the sideline, and then all of a sudden our best option is literally 50 yards away, and they are not connected.
That happens to us a lot in the UFA, because it's just the field is so much bigger, and we're taught to make all this space, and then all of a sudden the space is like so much space, and you only have 7 seconds, and like we can get in a lot of situations where we like at most can get like 2 looks in a stall count, where like in club, like if you have 10 seconds and you're in a bind, like you're probably getting like 4 to 5 different looks.
Yeah, the size of the ADL field made me kind of realize about structures being pinned to field size as well. Like when I imagine horizontal, then I imagine it like in an ultimate field, and like I imagine those four spread across. But like if in AUDL, then you just like spread them across the entire field. Is like they're probably too far spread, right? Or like, and split stack as well. You know, like do you want those two groups of people on the sidelines in AUDL? So then it may be like, oh, these other structures are actually like, you know, specifically for the size of the ultimate field almost. Whereas like the size of the triangles that you want to create to do like a kind of balanced spread, it's just depending upon your own skill set. It doesn't really depend upon the size of the field. It's not attached to that at all.
Yeah, you know, and then the next generation of players, they just run things because that's how the last generation of players did it. You know, we're no longer really innovating. Well, some people like now. You are, Felix, but a lot of us are not.
I think all of us here are.
We're trying. This
I'm
is
trying,
why
but it's hard. I really like the way you like get people to collaborate on the idea, so it feels like it's like their idea too, you know, which I think like in the past when I've tried to do this, because I do think there's a lot of this that could be I'm pretty certain that this could be very successful in the UFA, especially because you need to start with more people spread out. And I just think with the whole staying connected, and I like how it gives a lot of options to start the point, because another thing that was difficult was because the pools were so good, it was hard it can be hard to start a lot of points, because in club maybe where like you get to a little more momentum going forward and you can get a good deep shot, like a lot of time in the UFA, like they're down on you, the mark is set. So like I like the options that having more people next to you and closer in front of you presents, but it's hard to it's two things. It's one, it's a new idea. So, you know, people are always going to be a little skeptical, and there's obviously going to be a lot of flaws to it. So you have to like be able to like get buy-in to work through it. And two, kind of like you said, is like the skill set and the habits that a lot of people have are not made to play something like this. They're made to, you know, they're just used to playing a more traditional something. And that's, you know, that can be hard.
You know what just came to mind? So this is the sort of spoiler, I guess. One of the principles that we're thinking about, and I don't want to conflate this principle with what you have here. One of the things that TK is thinking about for our offense in the UFA is to always have a negative reset to deal with double teams and other situations. But what I know, we tried kind of experimenting with this at our open tryout and encouraging our handler group to really continue, like always have a negative reset, basically. But how it manifested was like maybe I would throw it to someone on the sideline or near a sideline, and then I would just hang out and not do anything, which it felt bad, not only because I have an ingrained habit, but I think also because is your cat okay?
Yeah, what's going on, Rue? Man, she doesn't normally meow like this. Sorry, one second. I should just sit in a box meowing.
Well, she loves the box.
She's hype.
So to finish the thought is when you combine everything, I think what I love so much about this is you do have to think about all the principles working in tandem and not like being able to isolate each piece and be like, and then throw out counters to it. And I think that's kind of what Kinsey you're touching on, right? Because people will see change and find a reason why it doesn't work, and then use that to no longer explore the collaborative piece or the iterative improvement. But like in the situation where if we want a negative reset, it doesn't necessarily have to be me who's throwing it to be the negative reset. If we are connected and creating triangles, it's things like that. Like I can throw that pass, I can run up line for you, Kins, and Felix can come fill the space in the same exact way.
And that's kind of the thing we were talking about earlier in regards to soccer, where it's like you have these like loose positions, but you have the
total football, total frisbee.
Total frisbee. You have the flexibility to fill. No, You're going to get me carried away. I'm going to be trying to do it all over again.
We're switching back to session 1, where we left off talking about challenges of adopting and teaching Hex offense.
Something that people struggled with, I think, is the positioning, like behind the disc, like being happier, having more people behind the disc.
Yeah.
Like when the disc's on the sideline, having someone back in that space that you're normally told never to kind of go into or whatever. When the disc's at the brick mark, having like, and there's kind of two ways of doing it as well. Like one is to try and have the disc in the middle of the shape the whole time.
Another is pull up a whiteboard too, if that's helpful. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, so there's kind of like there's two different ways of just of having shape in Hex, and the way that I've previously taught it has been to you got so the disc is on the brick mark here, you got your hat right in front of you, and then you got two players out here, whatever you want to call them, and you basically make the triangles like this. That's kind of an initial kind of thing. I hesitant to go too deep into this because, like I said at the beginning, like the shape isn't the most important thing. But like, you know, the triangles, the equilateral triangles do facilitate a lot of other stuff that everyone wants to do anyway. This is actually just a way of shaping your team to make it happen. So that's one kind of setup from there. But what I've seen some teams doing is actually Mexico were doing this as well. I was just watching their juniors play. Is actually have the disc in the middle, right? And then they set up like two back here, and they have wings here and two forward here, right?
Okay, yeah.
Those two can be in triangles. What they ended up doing was actually they kind of had like a smiley face kind of offense like this, just to, I don't know, I guess make more space over here.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but I've seen this, like this structure. If I'm going into my traditional brain, I've seen teams like I can think of Chicago Nemesis. They used to run two negative dumps like that.
Right. Okay.
Anyway.
So yeah, what the point of this is that these two players sometimes are reluctant to kind of be there, or it doesn't feel right being there. I remember when we first tried this, like these two players kind of edged up this way, and that just kind of made it bad. But I think it's valuable having that kind of that space being occupied, because it means that this space here is now like threatening, right? Because if either of these players get the disc like moving forward into these spaces, then it's basically like a power position, right?
Forward momentum is what we call that oftentimes. Yeah. So, okay. So if we're talking about buy-in from new players, at this point people are this is fairly easy to adopt. Is that what you'd say? Other than having, it's mostly the sideline situation?
Yeah. So sideline, it's just people feel a little bit uncomfortable with it. I don't know whether it's the number one thing, but yeah, like the disc is here, and everyone was like, you know, they really want to be in this space here for some reason.
Yeah.
And so then trying to get the dump to be here, or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And like the thing is, like normally that would be bad. Like, sorry, go on.
I was going to ask do you have specific names for, like, do you call that a reset or a dump?
No, because I think the semantics of those words don't
match
apply
well
to what they are in Hex. Yeah. I just put it back.
The back. Yeah. Or whoever's back.
Or a back, yeah.
I like that. I like the back.
So when we sometimes we talk about times when what we would call a reset is negative of the disc, and in conversations that we've had probably on air is buy-in is probably what I struggle with the most whenever I'm trying to teach anything, even if it's something that is 101, has been done for 20 years, 30 years, or 40 years, whatever. one thing that I really like about having people behind the disc is, put simply, if your defender is tight, if their defenders are tight to them, then it just means there's more space to use downfield.
Yeah.
And it's easier to create what, the Western US teams really like, which is a lot of isolations and big space.
Yeah, for sure. Look at that. One of the downsides is and that's like if you've got someone behind the disc here, but you've not got the rest of this set up. So let me take those people out. Like if you have just people down here or whatever, then when this pass goes, then this person is like disconnected, right?
Right.
And I still see a lot of turnovers come from here, where then like the next pass is basically too big. Like this person goes here, and like is just too long a pass, and there's just a high percentage of turnover. Or this person that just threw it like has to get it back. They're like the only connected player, and so then if everyone's on the same page, running Hex, then you actually have these two players here. All right. So then when that player gets it, then they have so many options to work with.
Kins is vibing.
I'm bought in. I'm ready. I'm ready to run it. I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Can I ask a quick question? So disc is on the sideline, and the player that you have circled. So I guess if you are just listening, if the disc is on the sideline and the look is to the nearest person off the sideline, but behind the disc. What if that person is well covered and can't get open? Is there a good mechanism to clear? Is there a good mechanism? Like, do they recut? What are your principles around that?
The principles don't go into that much detail. Like my instinct would be, if I'm there and I'm tightly covered, I would just kind of like chill, like edge backwards to create more space here. Like if this person's tightly covering, then they're not going to stop that much going into this space here. Like, alternatively, if they're like super keen, so I get a lot of like youngsters marking me, like being like they're going to physically match me, and so they're watching me and just matching my every move, and I'm just like, okay, I can't beat them, so like physically, so I'd like get eyes with the thrower and just expect a lead pass. Or my favorite move is like looking up like that, putting my hands up, and then they're like, huh? And then I just burn up low.
We call it a Ben Feldman. Actually, he was known for doing that. Yeah, that's interesting. I think this right here is a huge paradigm shift for a lot of people that I'm used to interacting with. And again, definitely not a negative, but like so many US players are about like work hard, get open. You know what I mean? Like it's not about like we think of traditional cutting, right? It's like more of like an American football route. It's like footwork, powerfully cut in this way, change directions really aggressively. And what I've actually been thinking about a lot lately is sometimes I think the shape of ultimate cuts does not need to be so sharp and can often be kind of more curved, or like doesn't have to be a quote unquote traditional cut and can be more thought of as just like backing up or like just moving to a different space. And it doesn't necessarily need to be like a sprint. You know what I mean?
Sure, yeah. And that changes like as the disc moves fast as well. Like the faster the disc moves, the game changes like a lot.
Totally.
Like I've done a drill before where you have somebody tightly marked, and then you got someone else who like cuts or like runs towards that player that's tightly marked. And they don't have the disc yet, but then they catch the disc, right? So they catch the disc going towards this player that's tightly marked, and that player can just get free just easily, like instantly. Way easier than like if the person just has the disc static and then turns and looks at them. Right. Then it can be hard to get free. But if they just catch it on the move going towards this person, it's so easy.
Easy.
Yeah,
because all that space is available to the other side. It is so funny that you mentioned the like work hard stuff, Mikey, because I think it is like very ingrained in Ultimate. That like we just need to like run harder than them, and that's what's gonna do it. And obviously, there's like a place for that, but I also think there's a place for like trying to think of new systems. And like, I mean, I think it on offense, definitely. And I think it's even more relevant on like defense, where like, of course, like tight person defense, there's always going to be like a place for that, like trying to just like win a matchup. But like, I do think, you know, like in other top sports, they play zones, and like not just being like trying to be like, I'm going to win my matchup is definitely an effective defensive scheme, but it's hard to like get that fully, you know, into the culture of Ultimate because it's so baked in to be like, we're fucking running harder than these motherfuckers, and that's what's gonna win us the tournament. Instead of like, you know, maybe we try something a little different and it could like work. But it is like you said, it's hard because especially for like top teams to do it, it's so difficult because they don't want to risk that season. They don't want to risk that tournament to like try to, you know, build out a new defense or a new thing because it's like, well, we've been we've been just trying to run harder than other teams for like 40 years. Are we just going to like change that now? You know?
So there's a recent thing that happened actually, which is very relevant to this. Indianapolis in the UFA.
I actually pseudo worked with. Sorry to interrupt again. Their coach, his name is leaving me right now. I think it's Doug.
Drew Shepard.
Drew. Yeah, that's right. And after we played them when they visited us last year, he and I talked for 20 or 30 minutes about I was actually really intrigued with the way that they played offense in particular.
Yeah, so they did a hard dive into Hex and or just like motion offenses generally. And we had a bunch of meetings and we worked together with them. They joined the Hive at like Patreon, like a higher tier, so we had like regular meetings and stuff and analyzed their footage. We got like you asked how many people work for Hive. Like we have like a Hive mind, which is a group of like 8 or so coaches, and sometimes when we're working together with a team like Indianapolis, then we'll take footage and I'll send it to the Hive mind and be like, right, you focus on this 20 minutes, you focus on this 20 minutes, and then you get like analysis from all these different coaches coming back. And yeah, they dove hard into it. And they played some great games. Like they had a crazy stat for one of their games where they had more completions than had ever been made before in any game in UFA. It was like 480 in a game or something like that. But not only that, they had in the same game they had the highest completion rate as well. Right?
The completion is that percentage? You mean?
Yeah, percentage.
Yeah.
So like
that is.
Like for me, that kind of disproved the thing of like, oh, more passes means more turnovers, and it's like not if your passes are like all easier than the other. Like,
right.
Like cutting hard under with someone near your shoulder or whatever, it's a hard catch. You know,
it's interesting.
Can I let me ask you a question about?
Oh wait,
I guess
in Indianapolis has still got the story going, right? Because they dove hard into it. Sorry, just to round it up, they dove hard into it. They ended up getting like the same results as they were getting before, right? It's kind of how it happened when I dove into it in 2012. Like they were getting the same kind of results as they were before the whole system change, but they found their players were having to work like much harder, and that equals like, you know, some of the players were like, you know, we've given this a shot, like we're fucking knackered now. Like, what are we going to do? Like, play another game tomorrow? And they ended up losing like a game when they had to play the next day or whatever, but because they ran out of legs. But then it's kind of like, well, hang on a minute. Our Ultimate teams traditionally focused on like working really hard running and let's beat them with our legs and stuff. And then it's like, now you got an offense which challenges your legs. It's going to challenge the defense's legs as well. Like, but they lost some players too, right? Cameron Brock left, and you know that could be related to their
style of play.
Well, just the change, the fact that the management
he's like a run to the end zone guy. Go sky a pack of dudes.
Kinda, yeah. Like he had a lot of time for it. Like, you know, we had meetings and stuff where he was like all about it. You know, he was like fully bought in and just like, you know, yeah, this is the future of the game and stuff like that. But then he didn't feel, I think, that it suited the style. Like Indianapolis had been good with their deep game, and they were struggling to integrate that with now everyone looking shallow rather than deep.
I feel like we're probably the three of us, I imagine, are thinking a lot of memories because we've tried to implement a lot of similar principles. Like we think of the way that we've taught it lately is just like phases of the offense and like phases of the field. And if we are well connected, we're trying to like not think about small passes. And like I want to ask specifically a question first about like strength of players. Like for instance, Quinn is an amazing vertical player, not only as a deep cutter but as a deep thrower. So maybe I'll ask Quinn you first. Knowing that, and like knowing that we've had, when we try to implement some of the, at least the principles that we've talked about, it has sort of shifted the paradigm in our heads too much to where we kind of forget some of our strengths. Like, what do you when you look at this, what do you think about, like, what would be the easiest thing? What do you like about it, and what would you like to maybe adapt?
Well, I mean, there is a few things that I do really like going back to the person that threw it to you, I think is like really advantageous most of the time. Too many teams catch it on the sideline and like look up field without like just thinking about, one look up field and then coming off the sideline, or catching an under like you were saying. And now it takes me 3 seconds to turn and look up field and scan where my next look is. Whereas it's like, you could just catch an under and dish it, which Truck Stop does amazing. Like Johnny Malks is the king at that. The king. Yeah. I don't know. Like even if it's like, you think like you're watching film, I'm like, there's no way he's like getting this back, or he's the secondary dump and he's not getting it back, but it's essentially the same thing. And I'm like, there's no way he gets this. And he just charges and gets it up like with forward momentum. And they had just gained, 20 yards, forward momentum, no mark on him. So I think things like that are great, but the lack of structure for me, and maybe it's because sometimes I'm just like, I want the lane and just give me the ball type situation. The lack of structure for me makes it hard to get the disc when it's just kind of like ping-ponging back and forth or that type of thing. And then like Mike was saying, the verticality, like the deep threat just does not seem to be there. It just seems awkward. And, who knows, if we gave it more time and more thought, that would change, but it just feels awkward sometimes.
Yeah, there was a team at World Masters called Dial Up, and they were playing Hex, and they were all about trying to integrate the deep game into it. But like it did seem a bit awkward. It was just like, oh, now this guy's not throwing the open bars and he's just going to throw to the end zone instead. Like it just randomly decide. Oh, that's what they're doing at this point. Sometimes it feels really nice. So sometimes it's like, okay, I can go deep from wherever I want on the field at any time. The deep shots are often have to be like over people though, like because you don't have those like open channels. So like, I think overheads are something you need to have if you're going to play Hex, because you got to get it over all these people that are like in front of you. And so then maybe that's something that would come into the deep throws as well, is there'd be more kind of uppy downy rather than just like, it's definitely like an ongoing kind of thing. Like I see us all as being a bit, because we've all learnt in the vert stack kind of style. I don't know if we're going to figure this out. This is probably for the kids to figure out, right? Because like the youth are starting to play, especially in America, starting to play with this style instead, and they're going to figure stuff out that never even crossed our minds, and maybe they'll have deep games just like fully integrated into their fast flowing offense.
What do you think about individual strengths? I suppose, like, do you when you're coaching a team, have you thought about trying to like integrate? Have you ever tried to integrate the deep game when you are teaching Hex?
Like I've designed a few drills where you kind of you have like a set order or whatever, and you can change that order up, or you can add a bit of flexibility, so like to encourage those kind of deep looks and stuff. And yeah, like I try and train players to be able to hit deep as well. but like I tend not to kind of define set plays and things like that.
For sure.
Yeah, it's ongoing, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm trying to brainstorm a little bit because I'm just thinking about like how truck stop opens up deep games too. Like it's often like off of like a mulks, what we call a bump, or like a successive break throws, or if it's not one of those situations where it's some sort of power position, it's usually like one of their individually great players. Like it's usually a Jacques off of the pull, or Malks, for instance. And of course, the one that comes to mind is when we played them at US Open and just totally had a blown coverage and didn't cover one of their guys. So I guess that's a good way to open up the deep game.
Yeah, I think it's not even like the ability to throw the deep ball. It's like the ability to see it, because like we were talking about, like the deep shot is usually over people, and that's not generally the issue. Like if it's
like
over
you can
someone,
throw a flick,
you just can't like see it correctly, and the timing just isn't there. And maybe that's because we just don't do it enough. But like you look at field and you just don't see it in time. So like for the example of like truck stop, when they're those deep shots are usually coming when they gain yards and the disc is going past like the majority of the people on the field, so that they can see more, or they get it and they have a lane in front of them. And that's to me where it's like, well, maybe we should just have those lanes all the time, and maybe not, but like that's kind of where I'm like, well, if I catch it, like I want to know what I'm looking at right away, and maybe my brain's just not trained to be able to like look at it.
Yeah,
but
maybe it is the next generation, because I do feel like there's a good way to marry some of these principles. Like when I think of the traditional hex shape, like if you were to get it, if the disc is flowing, it's easiest for me to talk without the diagram. It's like, I guess what I would call like kind of one of the rails, like positive of the disc, or maybe the hat. Like there seems to be like clear lanes to just like now where you're facing is likely to the deep space, and you just go, you just attack that space. Or
yeah, but like on paper, there should be a lot of things that make it easier, right? Like the fact there's only kind of two people downfield of the disc a lot of the time. So if they're marked under, or if they're marked deep, they're going to be free deep or under, like,
right
on paper. But I'm agreeing that it does seem to be can be a bit awkward to integrate it.
Yeah.
What about from like a stop disc? What do you think about like what spaces are you trying to, attack?
I don't think about like specific spaces. Like in my mind, as soon as you have a plan, it gives something the defense can disrupt, right? It's also very detailed, it's fine. Like teams might decide, as a team we want to do this, but like as a general offense principle, I don't, it'd be too detailed. The craziest idea I've had related to static disc on the sideline, because the problem with static disc is like everyone's static. Like flow's stopped because it has never started, right? But then I was like, do we need to be static? When you bring the disc in, why doesn't everyone just start like moving around, jogging speed? Defense is going to have a nightmare, right? You're defending someone and they're just kind of jogging aimlessly around. You have to keep an eye on like when's the disc going to be in, how much do I need to respect this movement? And then when that person puts their foot on the line or on the brick mark or whatever, then it's basically a fluid situation already.
I will say that's one thing I love about the UFA is there just are no full stoppages, and that's probably something we should be writing down to be thinking about as we transition into our preseason. The problem with the USAU rule set is every once in a while you do have the timeout situation, and you're forced to be static.
Yeah. I mean, you could do whatever really. Like instead of focusing on moves as well, or spaces, you could focus on like players as well. And like, right, it's you two. It's your responsibility to get open for the first look or whatever.
Yeah.
I've got a video of compilation of dial up throwing deep out of Hex, if that's something that you'd be interested in seeing.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
I just realized when we were talking about it, it's like, oh, actually, I made this.
I played in that stadium and turned it over a lot. Oh, interesting. This is off of a negative pass too.
Look at that.
OB, not executed well.
And it's not great Hex because you can see the shape. You know, they're all tending downfield. Even the camera operator's tending downfield.
Right.
And I got burned. You know, I know I do a lot of camera operating. I was running that's me at the top left of the screen. I'll probably run in.
Is that right?
To get that shot.
Could you rewind that one?
That was a dime.
Yeah, this is me here. You see my mouse?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the camera dude for a lot of these big games.
I should have said hi. I didn't know you were there.
Yeah, I'm kind of always there. This is why I'm working whenever there's tournaments, because I'm normally either camera one, like game camera, or the roaming camera running around.
It's interesting that it's like a decent amount of these looks are coming off of negative throws or throws to the sideline. Throws to the sideline, I think, is not uncommon though.
It's funny too because most of them. I don't know if this is always true, but that most of them are going to the deepest person, like generally. And it's like in like traditional sets, it's like, well, we don't generally want to like throw it deep to a guy that's that deep. Like it's like we want to be able to throw to someone who's shallow.
That one was maybe too deep for any offense.
Yeah, like some of them are going up to people that are like deep.
Yeah, way deep. Yeah. I'm not a fan of that.
Okay. I was going to say, something about going up, like the person is 40, 50 yards away already.
But what I like to do is
oh my God.
I like to see this and brainstorm though. And like, it is nice seeing it in motion here because I do see like opportunities of like, if you're attacking certain space, and what we would call like a connecting pass. Like I feel like there are so many opportunities to catch something in that middle space. Mm-hmm. And then it does make sense to throw to the deepest person, right? Because you're then that space between those two players is so much smaller and it should be a relatively easy completion.
Yeah. This is just stuff I was editing today. Oh, here we go. Here's a deep shot that Mexico did. Mexico Juniors playing Hex in the summer as well.
I do like seeing all these examples of resets being behind the disc on a sideline. It's interesting to me. And what's interesting to me about this sequence is attacking a sagging defender in the lane. Like, I feel like there's a lot to be innovated upon with how to attack sags.
Can you say again? Sorry, I had the.
So if you go back to like, Keynes, I think this is something that you think about a lot too. Like right around here, I should press play. And then just pause here. Like, I would say, and this is my opinion, and this team, I don't know exactly how. Is this Mexico? Yeah, Mexico's. I don't know exactly what they're trying to do here, but that person who just threw the disc, I assume like if thinking about Hex principles, right? Like they're probably thinking, look back to who just threw it to you, right? The return pass. But the spacing of it here, like I think could be innovated on in terms of like, what are you trying to attack and gain here? Because like trying to marry my traditional brain a little bit, when this person catches it here, our first look is probably usually continuing flow of the disc.
Right.
And that opportunity is sort of negated entirely by the way the original thrower moves into that space and creates an opportunity to sag. I mean, there are always trade-offs, right? Because you could probably run a give go off of this. I think what I like about it, like one thing that I really like about what everybody's doing, and one thing that I dislike, it's like I like and dislike at the same time, is you have to be really aware of the space you're trying to attack and create. But like if I think about what Quinn was describing earlier, it's like you also have to think about the space you're trying to attack and create, which means like everybody on the field has to think about it. And ultimately, I think that's a good thing, right? If more people can do that, that's a really good thing. And I don't think that like a traditional vert stack, center stack is a good tool to help people see that space. Like it's just like I'm going to go to the stack and stand there.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like it's almost like the whole of traditional like offense and defense has been around avoiding like players needing to use their awareness. You know, like you have cutting orders, you have particular spaces, you have just mark your guy out or like whatever, you stand on this side of them or whatever. A lot of it is like trying to simplify it and like make it not necessary for people to actually kind of like look around, judge the situation, and make an appropriate action. Whereas Hex is just constantly challenging that. It's just like no one's going to tell you what to do. You have to like figure it out. And when players begin playing Ultimate with that in mind, then they instantly learn like a whole nother level of awareness. A lot of players that I coach university level, we ended up winning nationals 3 times. I stopped coaching this year. And that was open men's. We have like 6 divisions in terms of like the genders and indoors and outdoors. But yeah, a lot of those players would then go on to Great Britain teams afterwards, and they'd be baffled at like the lack of awareness. They're just like, why are people like not throwing passes out to space for me? Like why when I've got the disc, I can see all these scoring opportunities and nobody's moving. They're just stacking up or something, like looking at me blankly. Like players will always come back to me and just be like, "What's going on, Felix? Like why are they not seeing the field the way I'm seeing it?" And it's because of that. Like they constantly challenged to kind of assess the situation you're in.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. I'm thinking of this example from I was just watching the semifinal, the women's semifinal. It was late in the game, and
of club
Scandal versus Brute, and I'm thinking of the situation late in the game where the person with the disc was completely unmarked and definitely more of a downfield cutter type. Completely unmarked, just them with the disc. They throw it to someone in the middle of the field who is marked. And then, so they're wide open. And this is like in an end zone situation, wide open. Do you know the situation I'm talking about, Felix?
I know what you're going to say. I don't know the exact one from this one.
Oh, yeah. But so they're wide open, just like the return pass, anything. They're free for everything.
But
they just put their head down and jog to the stack. And I just remember watching it being like, that is very interesting, just because, like you're saying, it just makes me think of this because we're talking about the awareness of like, you're open and you can just get it back and just like that kind of stuff. And I just love that you're like thinking about, because I think the game changes so much, like as it goes throughout time, like skill level, just all these different things. And I just love like, changing new things. And I think it's like, it's always hard to get, a group of people to open their minds to new ideas. But I just love like the new ideas, thinking of the game in a different way. And I also like the optimism you have with like the youth bringing, more fresh ideas. Cause I think it is like, we're just creatures of habit. Like it's hard for us to like rewire our brains to see these kind of new possibilities. Whereas those kids are just gonna, especially if they know like, oh, we don't have to just like play a vertical stack. Like the possibilities are really endless.
Yeah, I knew what you were going to say because I had the same revelation around a very, very similar play where I think it's the World Games, like not a very recent one, 2017 probably. And yeah, someone runs deep, lays out, catches it. They get a teammate come to support them, and they're right on the end line, and they dump it to the teammate. There's no defender near them. They dump it to the teammate, and then head down, run to the back of the end zone. And the person that catches it is like, why didn't you just turn back around and catch the goal? But yeah, for me, that was like, it's an indicator that there's something wrong with the way that we're training and playing this game.
Because they're wired to just run back to the stack. A lot of players who don't. Like, I think there's a lot of more like the players who are more ball dominant and are constantly searching for those like sliver of an opportunity to get the disc back and whatever, like those are the players you'll see. Oh, I'm running back to this stack, but I can like jab step and just go back into the space and I'll get it right back. Whereas the players, you know, who aren't as used to touching the disc as much, yeah, they're just going into autopilot of just like, all right, I'm going to meander on back to this. And that always pisses me off because you'll play the good teams like Revolver and stuff who are so adept at poaching and understanding when their player is not a threat and when they can like
their defender just
use that opportunity to like go stand in like the lane that we're trying to create. And so when you're just jogging back to the stack, like those good defenders are just like, oh, I'm just gonna actually not worry about you for about 5 seconds because you're completely useless at this point.
Punish the inactivity, you know, that's
totally
one of the biggest offensive
Quinn,
mistakes.
I see something on the tip of your tongue here.
Yeah, I got like 2 questions. So when we were watching the deep shots, it seemed like so the offense is predicated on like flow and stuff like that. But it seemed like when we were watching the deep shots, most of the deep shots came from a little bit of a stagnant position. Like it was like they would catch an under to the sideline, like Mike was saying. It was like a negative pass, and you had to look at it for a couple of seconds. And it wasn't really that much of a flow deep shot. Like it wasn't like people catching in power position or like catching it with like lateral motion where they can catch and look across the field. It was mostly like catching it and it was coming from not like not a flow type of situation. Is that something that you see often or am I making something up?
No, yeah, you're right. That's basically why I didn't like it. You know, it's like, flow stopped. Oh, now it's almost 3 deep. Let's throw it.
Flow stopped. I'm just gonna fucking jack it.
Time to rip
95 yards to the deepest person.
Yeah, but I mean that. Yeah, I'm just wondering if that could work. You'd be like, we flow. As soon as the stall hits 3 seconds, someone runs the end zone. You know,
yeah. And the second thing I was thinking, like, when it's flowing, it looks so good. But sometimes it almost flows too far in a direction that isn't advantageous for the offense, and someone has to make a really difficult throw to get them out of this situation that they created because like they flowed all the way to the sideline, and either there's too many people around the disc or behind the disc, and the lanes aren't super. It felt like they'll make like 10 really easy passes, like you were saying that Indy did, but then all of a sudden, after those 10, 15 passes, they have to make like 1 or 2 really, really difficult throws. Whether it's like sideline or just the positioning of the offense.
I don't know whether I've like noticed that myself.
I think what comes to mind for me is it's more room for innovation. It's like there's certainly an iterative step to this, and I think this is why I do like breaking things out into phases, because in my mind it helps us decide what space are we trying to attack right now and who to prioritize taking that space. So like when I talk about that as a coach, it's really just a mechanism to try to help what we were talking about earlier. How do we get everybody to be able to read the field in a sort of structured way without requiring them to run to a certain space? But like when you're talking about running to like throwing the disc to the sideline, what it seemed like is too many of the players were running, like kind of cramming the space. I almost feel like a looser hex in some looser structure would help with creating lanes and throwing opportunities. Whereas like that, like it almost feels like the person is trying to get into that like traditional reset position, and the secondary person is trying to cram in that space as well. And then everybody else who's trying to push downfield or whatever is like, everybody seems to be coming up too, like kind of too narrow to the disc instead of like coming out wider. I think that would help.
And that's just like classic offense though. Like any team on the corner of an end zone, you're like, oh wow, there's a lot of guys
flying.
There's a lot of
by
people.
your face.
There's a lot of people in this like corner of the end zone. You know, it'd be nice if they were a little more spread out.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
my
and
two
I-
comments, I'm definitely just describing problems that happen in Vert and Poe and all of those other like offenses too. It's not like that's a unique
yeah,
situation to Hex.
I think sometimes in Hex it can happen more because players have more freedom to do whatever they want,
Yeah.
and then your instinct is like, oh, I run towards the disc, and then you got 6 people running towards
Totally.
the disc. When I played it with Grandmasters last year, and they're old dogs learning new tricks, and one of the first things was like, we have to know when it's not your turn to get involved. You have to know when that you have to just step back. And like when I play Rocket League as well, like if I'm in threes, I don't know if this appeals to anyone, but
yes.
if there's 2 people up there with the ball and I find myself driving towards them, I'm like, get back away.
And that's why I like your attitude on it. It's like, there's all these things, like all these things that can happen that aren't good. And it's just kind of like, you just, go on and you keep trying to use like your gaming sense like to it and try to solve it as it goes. Like you can't, because I think like I think a problem when teaching offenses is like, oh, here's this problem, so we'll make this like hard set rule to try to avoid the problem, and then by enacting that rule, you just create 3 more problems that can spiral off of that, where it's like, well, it's like the simple thing, and these are the strengths of what we're trying to do, and just like figure it out, like go and like, because the other thing with that, like trying to make those hard set rules is like, there's just the possibilities are endless. So trying to create those kind of principles that you really want to be the core ones are very difficult and have to be pretty ambiguous in a lot of way and allow for the freedom of expression.
It's like you equip players for the situations rather than giving them a detailed map. Like I think there's some kind of analogy with like ships and shipping, and like instead of like if you got this mission to go around on a ship, you don't want to just like plan everything out exactly with all the route and everything. Things are going to change, like the weather. Instead, you want to equip the boat with all the stuff that you need to get by in the sea.
Yeah, I like that. I was going to ask like what you think the biggest strengths just of the offense are. Like just what do you see as like the main strengths of playing in your like dream offense?
Like robustness, I guess. Like it's there's no like, because it's so flexible, then it's very hard to like have a defense actually like clamp down on it, whereas every other offense is unbalanced in one way. It tries to make advantage of that unbalance, whereas Hex is kind of like, well, we're not going to put all our eggs in one basket at all. We're going to keep it all open. And so it's robust. It's hard for the defense to lock down. Also, just development of players, right? Player development just goes through the roof. Like everyone disc skills get way better. Their awareness, their communication, and it's lots of fun too, right? Like you want people to have fun when they're playing, and you start playing like this, and this starts bouncing around, and everyone's having a good time.
I love that, because there have been times where I try to coach like younger kids, and it's hard to get them to get the concept of like going into a stack, and I'm like, yeah, it is kind of dumb.
Yeah.
I think the point you made on like player development is like you like answered a question I had in my head before like I was able to ask, because like generally what I was talking about before, it's like if we get a less skilled person with the disc in a really tough situation, and this is any offense obviously, like that's where problems come up, like when we get a less skilled player in a tough situation. But like if all of the players, like you said, are equipped to handle these tough situations, then we won't have that problem. But like I think in a lot, like even the highest levels of club, like a lot of turns come like just baseline example, like sidelined, not super skilled break mark thrower. Like that's when a lot of problems come.
Yeah, I feel like so many traditional offenses are designed in a way to work yourself out of like the worst case scenario, like or just like let's always have the optimal situation, and we're like willing to trade off involving everybody, I suppose. It's like how do we just cram this one situation to every part of the field, no matter where we are.
Right.
I like the approach of it, like the collaborative piece of it. Like I love to just hear like what works well. I love to hear like what the challenges are, knowing that things can adapt and change and evolve. And I think like what I come up against so often in all aspects of life is like, well, here are the situations where it doesn't work. And so it doesn't work. Where instead of like what can we do to improve that? Like, just because it's not working right now in this situation with that set of players against this other team, then it will never work. And I think that is a huge issue with Ultimate in the US. Although I guess what you were saying is more younger teams, younger players are learning to play, more of that free flowing style.
Yeah. From what I understand, that's the kind of, that's the word on the street for sure. I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, I'm in. I'm down. I'm ready. Put me on it. I want to play Hex. I want to try it out. I want to open up my mind.
The reason I'm down is because I can just go be selfish and just get to this back constantly and just have it all the time.
You're always the return player.
It'd be so lit.
Give me it.
Give me back.
Do you ever see anything like that, Felix, where it's just like one player's bouncing back and
Valeria?
forth?
They just do it all the time, man, and it fucking works.
Yeah. If it's working, that's the thing. Like, no one complains, but yeah, sometimes people are like, they're discogging it. It's like, well, if they're always free, then they're always getting it. Like, it's like sometimes as well, if you don't have everyone on the same page and it's like, they're crowding the space or whatever. It's like,
I also want like Volley to have the disc. I'm pretty okay with that.
I mean, it's
a lot of shit can happen.
Balance.
It is an interesting balance.
Yeah, because. I think it's probably best to have everybody involved in terms of like being receptive or like being engaged in a game.
Mm-hmm. But then to like your strength things, like if one person's strength is like being an incredible thrower, you can allow for that by like they're usually the person getting and going. Whereas like if someone's an incredible like athlete, like they're gonna defer to being like creating the space and looking for that opportunity to strike.
The thing with Valeria is like, it's like in isolation, her throws are like amazing, but they're not what make her an amazing player individually. I think there's something about like her movement after she releases the disc or as she releases the disc, which is really destroys teams. And I'm not sure we have like lexicon to properly describe that yet.
Right.
I have to laugh. Matty Jackson is on our text chain. And he did just ask if we're running Hex for Summit because he knows we're talking to
you. Just tell him yes.
Till it blows mine.
My line is, I don't care. We're running Hex.
Can you talk just briefly a little bit about defense? I mean, we don't have to go into as much detail, but like, what are your general thoughts about?
Oh, actually, yeah, that links in with the thing I forgot to say. There's that lack of faith in something. As soon as there's like a problem with it, then you're like, oh, it doesn't work, abandon it kind of thing. That exists for a lot of things, but it doesn't exist for vert stack, right? Like, that's what I found, because flex, like where you'll surround players if they bunch together without need to really decide beforehand. So as soon as you see a stack, you surround it, right? And it makes it really hard for the offense. And I'm talking about like let's just go back to like beginners rather than like elite level players. But like if beginners that have just learned how to stack up and the beginners that learn to like surround a stack, the advantage is massively to the defense in that situation. Like absolutely massively. Like those players just can't get free anymore. But I've seen so many teams just have this like unwavering faith in vert stack that it's like, oh, they just need to do something differently to beat the surrounding.
Just run harder.
Yeah, you can run harder or overload, run through the poach or whatever. But like
run through the poach, baby.
Yeah. But like having done a lot of surrounding of stacks, I honestly just think it's advantage defense in that situation, and you got to change the offense.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that because in Colorado, they've, and I might trigger Kins here, they sort of like half ban zone at the high school states level because it just creates too much of an advantage for the defense.
It's like I find
it's like you're just handicapping. It's ridiculous. It's
the criticism of Ultimate itself, you know. Like,
it's like handicapping. Like, oh, this is like too hard for these kids, so they don't play zone. But also, like, honestly, I've had that frustration with just like some of the teams I've been on here where like, stop disc. Maybe we pulled it out of bounds and the other team sets up an avert stack and we're just like person. Like we have to play person. Where I'm like, in my experience, like the fucking like triangle around the vert is not a difficult thing to like get on the same page about. And it's just like, it's just so much better. And I suppose the like, one of the drawbacks is like if they have a matchup that, it can create mismatches. Like if, they have Ben Yacht in the stack and we have like some little person and, you decide to like clam it and then your little person gets on Ben Yacht. Like that can be a disadvantage for sure. But I also, and then so maybe you can do it more with like versatile lines and stuff.
Yeah.
But it always kind of frustrated me that, people weren't more willing to like do that kind of thing. Cause I've just always found it so effective.
Quiddinkins, do you think TK will be mad at me for saying this? In some ways,
now he will. Now that you said it, if you hadn't have said that, maybe he wouldn't have thought of it.
Oh God. So Felix, what we call our base defense is we say AP, and it stands for all person. But in a lot of ways, it is not. Like I think ideally it is, but it is about matching up. We do have like some specific switches, and we do have it is dependent on all people kind of doing the correct thing, but it is not necessarily about all people on the field like working together. What do you guys think about it? Would you agree or disagree with that based on how we've played defense over the last few years?
I think it depends on where you are in the field because our defense is you have to be working together in the dump set. If you're not on the same page in the dump set, the defense
2P then, right? We're 2-person, 3P.
Yeah, like it falls apart. But like downfield, it's not really about that. It's like more of like conceding certain spaces and contesting others. But like in the handler set, like you have to be working together.
Kind of. I mean, you definitely need like a couple switches, but there's more of it. The emphasis of the overall defense is more on like, your matchup and not working together as like, a unit. Which I guess the working together as a unit is like winning your matchup, everyone being like locked in on
trusting
there.
Your teammate's gonna win the match. Like, do the right thing.
Yeah, which has always been a little. I remember when I was younger, it used to bother me a lot more. And maybe as I got like, maybe it was just part of it was getting more athletic and being like more comfortable trying to guard a single person. But I remember being younger and like playing on teams that were just like person up, no unders, let's go get them, boys. And I don't know. It never really sat well with me, I guess.
It's very easy to like to determine what went wrong when you're doing that kind of simple kind of one-to-one defense as well. It's like somebody got beat deep, somebody got beat open side, that's why they got their pass us, or somebody threw a breakthrough, that you're also not supposed to allow that, so it's very easy for a coach especially to just be like, this is what went wrong, and also like when a goal is scored, there's someone nearby, right, who's like, oh, they almost had a bid or whatever. Whereas if you're trying to do switching and surrounding and whatever, then quite often you'll blow the sandwich and then someone will score and it'll be completely uncontested. And then that's when the coach is like, oh, that's terrible. Let's stop playing that defense.
Yeah, I've certainly caught myself watching film and I'll say the phrase, we're trying to help too much, or this individual is trying to overhelp. And I do think there's truth to that, but it almost would prefer playing a style where it's okay to help, like how do you figure, instead of saying like don't help, you're over helping, maybe try to figure out the mechanism, like how do we work smarter here and not like, how do we take advantage of the person that is trying to help and is hopefully not just a lazy defender that wants to sit deep and not run after anybody.
Totally. And I do think part of it is the awareness thing, though. Like, as you're growing up, if you're not, I mean, we're talking about like zone being banned. Like, it's just, it's more ingrained in you to try to just be on your person, like, and I think like if you're playing a style of defense that the emphasis is on guarding your person, then like, yeah, some people trying to like overhelp is definitely going to cause issues in that because everyone's trying to guard their person and then your person's free. And that's like, is a release of pressure.
So Felix, kind of to wrap things up, what do you think of the state of Ultimate right now in the world, and how do you think things will evolve, or how would you like to see them evolve?
I think it's so much better than it used to be. Like I used to get frustrated watching kind of every game, kind of how slow and predictable it was, and how the defense could be doing something different. But now, like, there's so many teams, and where like, the offense is interesting and the defense is interesting, and tight stacks will usually get surrounded, in some way or another. Sometimes it's people like pretending to surround, and they're still on 1-to-1, which is worse than just being on the right side of your person. But like most times that happens, and from my experience, what I've seen, like you're seeing more interesting defenses try different new things. There's a lot more variety in offenses. The direction that things are going is the direction that I like, which I think is good for strategy, I guess. There's another question as to whether it's like more entertaining. I personally like watching Spain play football and pass the ball around really quick, but other people think it's boring unless there's not big shots and stuff like that.
The big highlights.
Yeah, exactly. But I find it far more like stimulating to watch the quick, fast movement, being like, oh wow, how they're still using incredible athleticism, but just in a completely different way to kind of get huge advantages in the field, which aren't just diving full stretch to catch a disc. So I'm liking it. I haven't had the opportunity to kind of like sit and watch that much Ultimate in the last few years because I'm always like either filming or directing or running onto the field with a camera or whatever. So I'm kind of watching it. It's going through my eyes, like all the Ultimates. So much Ultimates go through my eyes. But like my brain is somewhere else completely because I'm just framing it, or I'm like thinking about what the next camera's doing. Had to direct 9 cameras for the world championships in Australia. So like the stream's going out, but I'm not actually looking at what's going out because I'm looking at what's next, and I've got to check what's going out before I switch the cameras.
That's the Hex awareness in a nutshell. You're not getting that from a VertStat camera setup right now.
That's like 2 cameras max.
Yeah, 2 cameras max. 100%.
Well, my follow-up question then maybe is not very useful, but I was wondering what you thought of when you watched teams in the US play.
Truck stop were moving the disc really, really quickly. That was really nice to see. Machines defense, Johnny Bansfield basically just being like, I'm going to play help defense, so everyone else has to help as well.
Yeah.
I find it interesting. I find it exciting as well. Like I was right, like the Alex with you and Bansfield, that was exciting. And I was on camera. I was on the gimbal camera for that, so I'm like running over there as well. Shit's about to kick off. Yeah.
How did we
That's
not know
so
that?
funny that I just didn't even put that together.
No, I think a lot of people don't realize that it's like the same.
I'm so excited for the next tournament now. Yeah.
You'll see me. Yeah, like
every
big like men's game. Like I don't do it for the women's because it might be intimidating or whatever. The guy running and charging around with the camera. But like for every big men's game, pretty much I'm running the gimbal, the Roman camera. So yeah, you'll see me.
That's sick.
Give me a high five on the camera.
I will.
Yeah, you're over. You come to the States a decent amount then.
Yeah. I actually just got the go ahead about just like 10 minutes before this started. I got the go ahead to book my flights for college nationals D3 and D1.
Oh, nice.
So I'll be over for like those 2-3 weeks, or whatever.
Where are those?
Burlington,
Washington.
Oh, that's right.
Kind of interesting.
So I'm going to fly to Seattle, I think.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then the last 2 years I've come over like for those 2 or 3 weeks for college, and then also for club. So I love it, to be honest. Like everything's so like comfortable in America. A lot of things you take for granted. As a visitor, it's good. I know that there's other problems, but
Yeah.
That's we're not that kind of podcast. Yeah, I'd love to keep chatting with you about all your thoughts around frisbee. I'm just trying to find more people to nerd out about everything with.
Yeah, I like this kind of, open-mindedness. Quinn and
Just
Mikey
like a nice little brainstorming session.
Yeah, Quinn and Mikey could say that I've been, thinking about weird kind of like structures.
You're weird as fuck.
I'm weird as fuck, bro. And a lot of what you were saying resonated with me, and I think it's really cool, and it excites me too. I think maybe in like a few years teams will come back and whatever, like they'll be like, oh, maybe we want to try this kind of like different offense every once in a while, like whatever. But like when you're just doing the same shit over and over again, and it's even harder and harder to like improve it and like iterate it and innovate it just gets a little, whatever. No, it's not as exciting. Like this kind of stuff, like completely shifting how you're viewing the game and how it can be played and different ideas, and like totally it's very exciting.
Yeah, and it makes me want to coach youth more than these guys. These guys are stuck in their ways.
I like youth. I just don't want to do it right now. And I think what's really like what's cool about this is like the sport needs it. Honestly, like in my opinion, like the sport really needs to be growing and evolving and changing. And I think there's like all these. We've just had a lot of like historic figures on, and we're doing more. And there's obviously like beautiful things about the sport that we should hold dear and not change. But I also think like once you start getting too stuck in the ways of like that you need certain things is like when you start to like kind of die, like changing and evolving and growing is like just a necessary part if you want to keep living and thriving. So I just like this kind of stuff, and being open to different new ideas that change the game, and whether it's like how you're playing or different rules or different kind of stuff like that. It gets me fired up about the sport.
That makes me think of actually. So I was just watching Above and Beyond from 2000 last night. The historical figures was
Plinko.
Plinko. The Condors were known for Plinko style.
Was it Jam? Was it Jam or Condors?
Well, now you might be right. Maybe it was Jam, but I think it was Condors. I've known players from both that now my brain is. It might have been a Stanford thing that evolved to both teams a little bit. But I was actually watching. So I was watching a women's game, and what I could when you hear them talking. So it was Molly Goodwin, and it was I think maybe Sarah Russell was someone on their team. I can't remember. There's two players from Lady Godiva talking over this game that they were watching, and what was very clear is that they had a very strong analytical brain. They both did, and like a sense of strategy and why they were doing things. And there was like a real purpose. Like they chose to run offense this way because it worked really well for their team, and they had been developing it over like years together. Whereas a lot of teams today, we just take that as a blueprint and kind of blindly run it,
right,
without like really thinking or understanding completely why.
Right. So it's when these innovations happen, then people understand it more. Similar to, I guess, when you start coaching, you start to understand why you do certain things when you're a player better.
Totally. Felix, what's the best way to follow you and check out stuff on the Hive? And
YouTube,
Instagram. What's coming this year?
Like YouTube, we've got a lot of YouTube shorts and longs, we call them, coming over the next year. We got kind of caught unawares last year that we were going to be so busy filming, and we ended up kind of not having content stored up to release whilst we were busy filming. So we're kind of making a lot of content now to kind of release over the year. So yeah, YouTube's a big
that would be
one.
like instructional stuff.
No, that would be YouTube videos are kind of more like analysis or interesting things, or like, how do you do this or whatever. The instructional, the kind of the more teaching, the more coaching, training stuff is on the Patreon. It's kind of like that's how I kind of survived in just doing Ultimate. Is that I was like, okay, well, with these videos, I'll kind of show how you do something and why you do something, but then like how to train it is something that I'm going to have to monetize, because like I wanted to just release everything. I make a good video. I'm just like, right, everyone want everyone to see this, and I'm like, I can't do that if I want to actually have a living. So yeah, the training stuff's behind the Patreon. YouTube has got loads of other stuff. Instagram as well. We're very active on. We got a crazy number of followers on Instagram. The whole of Colombia seems to have just followed Hive on Instagram. I'm not sure why.
We might need to pick your brain on the business side of things as well. Then,
no, definitely. I would love to talk more about that sometime. We'll have to have the next episode.
Yeah, I'm game. I've really enjoyed this, so I'm up for coming on again if it suits you guys.
Yeah, and I love that you were like, well, I like that you charged for it and made a living off of it, because I think that's like another thing that is, as the sport grows, like more and more people that are able to commit full time to thinking and living the sport is just going to be great for it, because there's just more going into it.
Yeah, right. Well, I quit my office job in like 2011, and it's just been Ultimate
that's
since
sick.
then. Basically.
Since 2011, it's been.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of help from the government in the initial years. The last few years have been pretty good though. Like there's so many filming events now, filming gigs, and then Hive obviously is getting successful. So it's been going well in the recent years. Yeah, it's hard.
Can I ask, is Hive is it like a 50-50 split, or what is it bringing? What is what's the biggest part of your income between those two?
No, it's tricky because there's like the season and there's off season, but I'd say probably more from filming gigs than from Hive in total. But the Hive is more kind of like spread out over the year, and then the filming is
and ideally Hive has a growth trajectory.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because like we every month we add a new training video, and I don't know about other coaches, but like I found whenever I ran a training, I'd like have a new drill. Had to come up with a lot of new drills, really, because like so many other drills, so many existing traditional drills come from a stack mindset, like it's a static situation, you've got cuts coming from a cue or something like that, and it's just like this doesn't really apply to the style that I'm trying to teach. So I had to come up with loads and loads of new drills and stuff, and we basically we're adding a new drill video to the Patreon every single month, and so then over the years now we've got like 50 drill videos, so it's like the value has gone up a lot, even though
for sure. Yeah. You need to start charging more.
Yeah, maybe.
I used to be a Hive member. I don't think I am currently, but I'll have to rejoin so I can watch some of those. Man, I'd love to. Yeah, I want to brainstorm with you.
Yeah. Well, Discord is always on, so
I'm trying to be a Hive bee, a worker bee.
Worker bee, yeah, that's the fundamental level.
I guess before we let you go for today, do you have any questions for us? Anything you want to talk about?
I guess something on my mind is Alex. I almost made a video about you. In that it's a good one. It would be a good one. Basically, I can't remember which year it was that you guys won nationals. 2019, 2019 was it? 2022. Oh my god. Okay. And yeah, like
feels like it was 2019. Feels forever ago.
Your celebrations were great, and they just I felt like, not just in that game, but I think the whole of US Ultimate, it felt like too serious. Like everyone was like, spiking hard on like, normal plays or whatever, and it was just like, come on, you really that stoked about that offense hold?
Open side cone, edge spike.
and it was all just very like, serious, work hard, blah, blah, blah. And then you come along and you just start goofing around, and immediately, like, in the video I would have theorized, this probably put your whole team at ease, and suddenly everyone's enjoying themselves. When people are enjoying themselves, they play a lot
Felix,
better.
this is called the Saga of Kins.
Yeah.
That was
Chapter 2.
We had Zenkins that game. We don't always get Zenkins,
Right.
but it's nice when we do.
Zenkins is like trying to come back out, but it's hard. Kins are complicated. A lot of characters in there.
Okay, Zenkins. All right. Well, hopefully we'll see it. We'll see Zenkins come out a lot more.
Yeah, I'm working on it. No, it is funny that you mentioned that because those celebrations. It was really just the example of the mindset that I was in. Like just very carefree, relaxed. Like it felt very easy, very fun. Like just playing frisbee. Which is like ironic because it was like definitely the biggest game that I had ever played in, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it felt like the most chill pickup game. Like I just could have been like a kid just playing like whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's funny how
to emanate that really brought you
right.
well.
And that's what that was like the big thing. And when I like look back on it, I know like that was like a lot of people watching had that reaction. But it's funny how hard it is to recreate that mindset. Like I'm a very, because you could ask a lot of other people. Like I can get very like I do the like intense like angry spikes kind of like very often. So, but this is a good reminder, to keep working on that. Keep having that.
It's not just your teammates that notice either. The spectators also feel the energy in a good way.
Totally, it's very interesting.
Yeah, it was great to watch that game.
Thanks.
Cool.
Sweet. Well, thanks for being here, Felix, especially on short notice. And we'll be in touch.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
All right, peace out.
Peace.
Bye.
Stick around if you want to check out our bonus The Ultimate Playbook segment with Felix going over Truck versus Bravo and Truck versus Machine Film.
Excuse me. Hello, it's me, Kins. I just wanted to let you know that we're going to start breaking down a bunch of films. So if you want to watch that, you'll probably want to check in over YouTube. Spotify isn't going to be a great way to listen to this.
Or Spotify video. Just make sure you can see the screen.
Yeah, they side stack initiation. They did this sometimes.
Yeah.
So often though, you get nowhere. It's like if they hadn't have had a set play, they would have been fine anyway. They would have got to the same position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting because that is the thing too, where like they're in a side stack and we were all like tight on them, out in the side. And I feel like they could have, if they were better, they could have done a better job at like really.
Yeah.
If they were better.
But they had so much space, I guess, to attack like the deeps and stuff.
One thing about truck stuff that they do really well is they do have structure, like traditional structures, but they are loose with it. Mm. They're not in a straight line necessarily all the time.
Yeah. There's general spread, like a little bit less now, but like the general spread, like the previous like 20 seconds, this was really nice. Like they had the reset behind the disc, but everyone else
to go
like
back?
yeah, just like 20 seconds or something as they're kind of working up through the middle of the field, I guess. Like none of them get really close to each other when they're doing this, like going down the kind of middle, and or like really far away from each other, and they always seem to have like a reset, but then like enough space for kind of like two other options.
Yeah, I remember when this happened, when we were in this situation, I was like, holy shit, we are so screwed, because look at this. Is that Jacques with the disc?
Yeah.
It's Boxley one-on-one, even with the disc, and everybody else is behind it.
But I thought that even when they started the point that they could have done, like that's what I was saying. Like I just felt like when the point started, like they had all that same isolation. It was just kind of interesting.
Right. Yeah. I guess you want one of the things you want from a set of players to have an immediate scoring threat, right?
Yeah.
So whether that's having the underspace is all good as well, but like I think the point of a lot of the space is so that nobody's going to help out on a deep shot if it's on.
And that's also one where I think if A-Roy looks to Boxley a little faster, like Noah doesn't get that D. Like he kind of is just like, even that like kind of pointless pump in the middle. And being very nitpicky. But if I'm thinking of it from the lens of like some of the things we were talking about.
This one's interesting. It's okay. We can nitpick here. I mean, Truck is obviously they have been the best offensive team for 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Felix, I remember you commented on this a little bit on one of your videos. Like Noah here for us is on Boxley. He's playing a little bit off, and that is actually not the way we tell him to play D. Sometimes it comes up, it bites him because he can play too far off, but it is also what makes him great, that he's able to make up this ground and sort of bait that throw. But usually we are asking the defenders, I should have had my Epic pen ready.
To be a lot tighter, like on the outside hip of Boxley, like on Boxley's left hip.
Yeah, so we're like, my pen's still opening, but it's basically we're asking him to be right here, typically. But he would not have been able to create that block if he had been in that situation. This one, we actually had a blown coverage. Nobody was guarding Mulks, so that kind of definitely hurt us here.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, this is one of those ones where you watch it.
That makes me.
Yeah, you watch it from like, and you imagine each defender what they can see, and you're like, how can you not see that like the person you're marking is being marked?
Yeah,
it's a little bit like, it's awareness, but I don't ever blame players because I know that the awareness doesn't get trained very much, like traditionally when people are learning how to play. So it's kind of understandable that awareness levels are down, but yes, it's very frustrating.
This situation, Kins, what do you think about this? I feel like they're doing a really good job here, spacing wise.
But this is like the balance thing that we're talking about. Like they're doing a good job spacing, but like we're doing a bad job defensively. Of like clearly they just want to go down that lane, they're just like sprinting into it. Like, I feel like a more coordinated defense would have someone, in that space because they just keep. This is like that. What I was referencing earlier, like the fact that they're just able to go up that whole sideline when it's like without the disc even like swinging and stuff. Like, I just think that's not,
it's bad defense.
I think it could be better. Like you just could be a little more tactically.
It all happens like so quickly and so smoothly. It's hard to kind of really kind of say where the specific mistakes are. Like,
I just think it's like a structure thing. Like, I just think when they clearly want to go down like these sidelines, like there should be a way, and like all those guys are clumped, like we're saying on one sideline. Like you should force them to have to swing the disc and then try to take advantage of those numbers on the other side, rather than just like allowing them to play one-on-one in this like huge space that they've created.
I love this little sequence. How quickly Mulks just attacks this space. It's so subtle, but
the triangle.
The triangle. It is a triangle here. Like this is Nanda here. He's playing in space. He's trying to help with that lane, and he just immediately attacks. And there's no hesitation for them to hit it.
You see the negative reset here. Like normally you'd have someone like run up and like get into shot and start closing down the window. But like they hang back a bit more, and that offers more space for that inside offline break. And they're all so active that like as soon as they do one pass, then the next one's like much easier, right? It's very often like their flow will just be like 1, 2, 3, 4 passes, and then maybe halt a bit. But then when they get one, they normally get the second one, so they like initiate flow very reliably.
I'm not sure if this is actually true, but it seems like when A-Roy gets the disc is when it stops the most.
Yeah.
It's kind of surprising to see that at all. That was a nice throw.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me just watch that one again. Oh yeah.
I mean, like, what's his name in the back there should definitely be helping, but that's fucking. Is that me? Fuck, dude.
It's the best kind
So-
of analysis.
Yeah. What, kids? What we are we just single direction here? We must be. We must have just been all forehand here. Because it surprised me, Felix, that Eric here is not sealing, and this throw becomes so uncontested.
I mean, it has to be a very accurate throw. The defender's like right on their shoulder,
Totally, yeah,
but
yeah. That was
there is still the
Sky
space to throw.
Marshall.
Is it like a middle flat force or something?
It's basically
just-
yeah. We like to force back a lot, so basically our principles of defense are the exact opposite of the principles of flow, which is make things choppy.
Make things choppy. How do you mean?
So like in a traditional, single direction, one way forehand force or backhand force, teams generally they know how to predict that and are able to flow really well. So we try to use the mark to just stop those easy flow looks as much as possible.
Okay.
It definitely manifests mostly as a force middle.
Yeah, because they just will naturally kind of bounce across the middle like that in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, like, you had the triangle in the backfield there if they needed it.
Yeah.
Just the number of like options that they have, like
Yeah.
it's why it never like it's hard to really analyze because it's like where's you don't have any purchase on this. It's like there's not that many like flow stop situations. There's always like something happening. People moving, options to take. Like, there's the backwards reset again, and flows generated from it immediately.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the triangle on the backfield causing a threat up the far sideline.
And
taken.
really, after Gus throws this one to Jacques here, Jacques has so many options. Like he throws a goal here to Wodach, but Johnny's going to be available for a little bump there.
Yeah, and that Johnny being available is directly the result of having two people behind the disc there. Yeah,
and the spacing of triangles, I think you always have two threats. And I am fairly certain Truck doesn't explicitly talk about a lot of these things. I think it's mostly from what I've talking to Rowan, who's no longer on the team. It has been more about I suppose different principles of moving the disc quickly, but not like let's form this specific shape.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the getting rid of trying to keep structure midpoint is more important than actually implementing ideal structure.
Here's one of their different formations. I've called it a T-stack before. Off the pull. But I think, like you said, Felix, the strength of their offense is not set plays. They don't really need them.
Yeah, those triangles are more than just two options. It's almost like two like route paths of options because like the fact that those players are so close to you, you can then go with either of them. One of them can pass to the other one. It's like it just branches from there and it becomes almost exponential with all the connections.
That was so fast. Let's just watch that again.
Movement. I'm really liking Norbom right now, but yeah, their movement is just so quick. Bing, bing,
yeah, Norbom is good.
Yeah, go back to see that outward turn right here.
Okay.
So forward a bit when 47 catches it, couple of passes, I think. Yeah, this catch here. So if he turns to the right and stays looking at whoever threw that. Is it Johnny? Then it would be a much quicker pass and much easier pop, and
this is
just there.
This one's interesting because I agree with you. What Truck excels at, I think, and I think elite players do generally, is they're able to get back to this pass still pretty quickly. So he turns on the outside shoulder, but because they go through the reads quickly enough, like they're still able to get it. There's actually I know you clipped this one as well. There's one of Boxley in the Machine game, which we can watch maybe later, where he also turns to the outside, but they're like so ingrained to come back to the inside very quickly that they're still able to hit it with.
Because what's nice about it is it moved the mark like to get them out. It kind of got the mark going to the outside, and then he was able to come back in.
That was a nice catch.
Definitely just when they do the side stacks, like I feel like, teams should be more out in the lane. Like those 4 people that are all like, even now there's like 2 people all clumped up over there, like we could be more out in the lane for sure. This
is cool too. Just like this is Beef getting it off, or Jarek getting it off the sideline from Alks here, but we think of him as a downfield guy, but he recognizes space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really good. Really good. Yeah, just not clearing out and just being like, well, I'm just going to be available. And then the ability to take that as well on stall 1.
Mm-hmm.
It should be standard. That shouldn't be remarkable, but it kind of is.
Right.
Got Elliot Bonnet cutting as well. European import.
He's good.
He is. I played with him actually. I was on the same team as him as in a beach tournament. It was his 18th birthday. It's like
18.
Yeah, it's like a year and a half ago or something.
Yeah, the fact that they're able to get these isolations off the pole is definitely frustrating upon review, Kins.
Yeah, Boxley fits this kind of movement and everything so well. There are like certain players that you're just like, yeah, they would absolutely love playing this principled, like, less structured kind of version of the game.
Look at Boxley's footwork here too. I really like this. I think I see a lot of players tend to do is they'll just continue to go into some space downfield, but he makes Nanda the defender here. I'll go back a beat. He really has to respect this, and he's giving space and being an option. Subtle things like that.
Yeah. Like move. This thing of like
there, though.
Being active doesn't mean like being 100%, right? So like what Boxy's doing there is just taking slightly bigger like side steps or whatever,
right?
Just to reposition, get a little bit of spacing between him and the disc, but like at the same time he's like threatening everywhere.
And what I like about this as well, we always think about, not always, American teams tend to think about cutting in such like an American football style of like you run in a straight line, you cut at a sharp angle, maybe chop your feet. But Boxley is just backpedaling here, and he's creating a really good opportunity to be a threat to move the disc laterally. And if Nanda does overplay to this space or he gets checked down to, he can probably plant and attack this inside space again. Or, it just depends. It's just like the point is a cut does not necessarily need to be sharp angles where it's just like a wide receiver cutting on a football field.
Yeah, for sure. And the faster the disc moves, the less that is kind of like necessary, and the harder it is to do actually to time the big moves to be free at the right time in the right place. The faster the disc moves, the easier it is just to be ready for the short, quick passes. Such a nice throw, that last one, by the way, to lead box.
Yeah, that was nice.
Do you guys notice when the scoreboard has the name in white and the background in white? Or do most people not notice that?
That's funny.
I know it's what, like, there's a million things to do between games, like checklists and stuff, and then like you bring the scoreboard off and it's like that, and you're like, damn, do I take it off and then change it and then bring it back on? Do I change it when it's live? Like we try to avoid doing that because people might notice it.
So Machine here plays a much different style of D than we do generally. Like they are much more switchy. And
They didn't do one switch that I thought they would, like 10 seconds ago or whatever. It was like
was it back?
No, go back. Yeah, go back one more. Click. One more.
I'll go to the beginning of the point. How about that?
No. Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I went too far.
Yeah, we were there. It's okay. Because if you watch, it's going to swing back to the far sideline one more time, I believe. And then it's going to be on this one. But like Desmarais is like kind of sitting here at the front of the stack. And they have this one guy out in the lane. And I think it's Bonnet who's going to go all the way. And it's like Desmarais should just like, go with him.
Oh, yeah.
It's just kind of interesting. Just like that kind of stuff, that
Yeah,
flexibility.
That was interesting. You could probably show that a couple of times in like slow motion if you can, because like I think Desmarais has to make a decision at some point, and I think he decides it's too risky to leave the deep space. Like I think at the moment he has to make the decision. He doesn't have eyes with the other defender.
Totally.
So he kind of looks around to check maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Whereas it'd be nice if he could just go take that. The defender just drops down and takes Boxley. I don't know. Just probably would have taken away a free look that they have.
Yeah, I mean, Desmarais does like.
I know, but that's why I thought he was going to do it. Right. That's why I thought he was going to do it, and that's I think why it maybe stood out to me more.
Yeah, I think it was a vision. I think it was a vision thing, and I think he made the right decision in the end. I think if he had gone with it under when he saw the under free, actually his teammate was booking it under as well. Boxley would have been free deep.
Ideally they're a little bit more coordinated together there.
Yeah, that being behind the disc when it's on the sideline, I think makes everything so much easier. And it's, I think you're saying, like when you pass, if you pass to someone that's on the sideline, a lot of the time you don't really have to go very far to be like in a good position. You can just like chill. Offering the return pass doesn't necessarily mean always cutting for it. You can just pass and then just be ready.
Yeah, something that Kins and I have talked about in this situation is the path of least resistance to get buy-in for our teams has been the traditional put your reset slightly positive if it's on the trap sideline. The mark is a little bit different here. It's not fully trapping. I don't even know what their force is. I wasn't paying close enough attention.
I think it's flick. I think they're just not going full
They're
around.
progressing here, yeah, probably. But I would love to get in the habit of having a negative reset behind the disc more often, regardless of what the force is and which sideline it is. The arguments that I usually receive from players is, well, if I'm a cutter trying to fill that space, then that person's just in my way. Like I can't cut to the negative space if there's someone already there. But it's all like you could always just reposition. You could go further negative. If the defender does happen to leave that negative reset, then he's free for the wide open pass. But that's been a really hard mold to break.
But if you go back, then Boxley is free.
Right there.
Like,
yeah.
You see how there's like basically three opportunities to be like three kind of spaces. You got the backfield, the infield, and the downfield, right? And that because that person's so far in the backfield, the reset, then there's enough space for two other options downfield. One of them being Boxley lateral.
That's a good point. Yeah, and if Cole is coming too far into that space, then Boxley wouldn't be open.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll go to the next point. Similar isolation for Jacques there. Familiar. I think one thing that they do well, Kins, even against defenses that maybe are helping more, is as the disc does get to the far sideline and these defenders are maybe thinking about helping off, like at Time On here's and Wodach are both attacking those defenders pretty aggressively. They do have an extra one here, Xavier.
I thought
But
Xavier
because
could have switched them.
yeah, probably that might have been the play, right?
It's like he's almost like he blocks the defender.
He was just kind of there, but like he wasn't doing anything. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. There's room for improvement there defensively.
Because didn't they only turn it over like once this game?
Yeah,
they turned it over
think
twice
so.
in our game.
When you actually look at like turnovers, it's considering how much people emphasize one-to-one defense, the number of turns that are from not one-to-one defense, the ratio is surprising.
Meaning people should play less 1-to-1. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the most fortuitous, the blocks come when you don't play 1-to-1, or like when you break out of your 1-to-1.
When you
quite often
introduce some confusion to the thrower and receiver.
Yeah,
the offense, I suppose.
I mean, any number of things it does. But yeah, like the number of actual like pure 1-to-1 Ds that happen is I don't know, it's probably like 50-50 between that and a number of like poach Ds or switches causing a turn. Anyway, as a side point.
I agree. By the way, I like what Cole's about to do here. What happened to us in the UFA actually last year? Some teams would tend to like leave their cover to like help in lanes more often. In club, like we see Revolver do that really well. But like we would have basically two people kind of too much on top of each other. So like if the deeper cutter, like a traditional vert stack, is like cutting almost too close to the whoever's underneath them, like in a lateral sense. So like instead of cutting it out wider, it was cutting kind of too vertical. And I could tell it was getting in our throwers' heads to the point of like, even if the defender on the shallower cutter is no longer peeling off to help with the under, like Xavier could have, the thrower is thinking that it might happen. So we would either not throw to open unders or throw it too wide of the shape of the cut.
Right. I see. Yeah, there we go. There's some help in the switching. To Murray at the back and some points.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we're talking like defensive principles as well, like for me, as soon as more than one offense player is like in a small space, then the defense should work together. Like it's like a trigger,
Yeah. An action trigger. I feel like is a word I've heard in a book that I've read. One of the books. I mean, it was the Barcelona Way, which I talk about all the time.
I think that first bid there by De Marais is also a poach.
This
like
one
after the turn.
Oh,
we'll move. Just yeah. Yeah, here we go.
Oh, I see.
That one. Yeah,
that's
he's actually on Boxley or something there.
Yeah.
He's a good player. He's a heady, instinctual player.
Yeah, well, he comes from football, soccer, right? Like, so he has all that kind of awareness and everything like that immediately.
Oh, and I think. Sorry to go back too far. No, I'm not there yet. I was gonna point out Boxley's footwork after the throw. We'll go to the next one. Oh, it's this one. So he turns outside but comes back
nice.
inside.
Yeah, just bounces off it. See, if he'd actually faked then it might have actually cost him too much time, and he wouldn't have been able to hit that short one. I know it used to be people would get in this situation and fake. Now,
yeah, you can see his head's already turning to the middle of the field.
Yeah, and he just flaps the disc to get the defender to carry on biting.
Bravo was running a pattern like this for warm-ups. This was our, what did we call it? Kins, bump.
Bump, flare, or whatever. Or
flare, bump.
Now I just want to get, whenever I watch the film, it just makes me want to go like play and try shit out.
Yeah.
But it's all right. Just another year of side stack. Good. Just grinding away. I'm just going to run harder. My MO.
Yeah, that's the solution.
I'll just be working harder.
Yeah.
Than my opponent. So no need to think about anything.
Easily actionable. More gym, more sprints, more track.
Look at Norbom here. He's doing such a good job.
Dude, he's kind of a beast watching this film. He moves it so quickly.
And then look at him. He's got Walden chasing the whole point.
Well, and also A-Roy is just free.
Yeah, is that
situation here?
Yeah, getting ready, getting available for the return. Like he's always available, right? Ever since he just left his hand, it's been an option now.
Yeah, Norbom is, I think, a really good player for people to watch as like the secondary handler. I wouldn't call him necessarily secondary, but I think a lot of players, in a traditional sense, there's usually a secondary reset. He's a good person to watch.
Oh, can we scooch back a little bit to where Boxy was kind of in the middle? Yeah, just there. You can maybe pause it when he's like makes that little move. So here's another thing about the spacing and the negative reset, right? Like you have when just go back like a couple of seconds, just when he's like stands still in the middle there. Forward a bit. What? Yeah, when he's like trying to get free, but like before he clears out. Yeah, so like just around here, and like Box is offering that. You got the negative reset, but there's also basically space for someone to cut like down like to the sideline at the bottom, and there's also kind of pretty much space for the disc to go across to the far side behind as well. And these, just kind of occupying that space and being like, hey, if the defenders aren't really close to us, then you can just throw it.
Yeah, I'm imagining someone standing here on another team and him getting yelled at for just being inactive, standing there. I wonder if is it as much because Boxley excels at this space, or if it's just because we're so steadfast in our ways, you know. It is amazing how often Boxley just stands still.
Yeah, I think I said in the Stop Truck video, he is one of the fastest players, but he's also one of the best at standing still and getting the disc. It's two opposites.
He just sits in space. He makes people come to him.
And if they come to him too fast, he burns them the other way.
Yeah, he's too quick.
This is that, and then Machine gets their little setup though. Oh, foul! Go back a little bit, like
one more.
Like, go back a little bit more when they kind of started like this initial motion. Go back.
Go back.
It kind of when it came off this close sideline, like before it went to Boxley. I just feel like they were very like spread out here, and it created a lot of options for them. Like just like to the point that we were talking about, like they're very spread out in like different areas here. and it gave them a lot of options. Like, I don't know how they hit Boxley right there in the middle, and then Monroe's like there for the next one. Then they kind of cleared upfield. Then they have more people upfield now, and that is kind of when Machine got into like a little bit more of their thing.
But yeah, having that spread, and they're already spread. It's not like they're all moving into those positions or whatever. They're already there, so like they're already just instantly hittable. As soon as one gets hit, they're connected to the others. So
Dude, Wodach is like wide open. It was wide open in the back.
that's like 100% negative reset there as well on the sideline.
It is a tough situation though. I mean, it's a tough situation.
That's a flick blade, dude. Right to Wody. Every time.
Would you? How do you feel about their spacing here, Felix? This comes back on a foul.
I think 4 people being connected to the disc is too many.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, it quite often it'll quite often mean they get in the way of each other. Like, it's hard for any of these players to get free because they're running towards another defender that's quite close.
But maybe if A-Roy backed up and was more like that wide.
Yeah, either Aver or Norbaum, probably.
Yeah, and was like farther away.
It looks like Norbaum kind of started to realize it maybe a little too late.
Yeah, both of them actually backed away a little bit there. Yeah, I like there being 3. I think 3 is quite good. Like, when you have 3 and they're all nicely spaced, you can actually like see them all without having to turn your head as well.
Like 3 plus the thrower.
Yeah. So the thrower has like 3 others that
are well connected.
Yeah.
Where did Jacques just come from here?
It's almost like the side stack again. I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
this was a bonkers play.
It doesn't matter where you throw it.
He just took that from him. That's embarrassing. Negative reset.
Totally.
Yeah. You see that there's... You go on.
Oh, I was just going to say there's clips of Bravo versus Revolver quarterfinals 2023 where one of our handlers, Connor Tabor, is getting negative resets on the trap side. It's something we never teach, but he does it instinctually, and it works out really well for us.
Nice. You see the Ultiworld video about the super dump?
Yeah, I did see that.
Yeah, and they noticed that even if the reset goes backward loads, then it normally comes forward the same amount, like immediately. Like
they were highlighting dig in that one, were they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like utilizing that negative space. There's a coach, Valerio Ianni, in Europe as well. He talks about this a lot. Like the negative space being actually a very powerful tool. You just have to like be comfortable trying to then use it. Like you can generate flow in the negative space.
I totally agree.
And then the more you can utilize the negative space to your advantage, then the more the defense has to respect it, and it opens up the upfield too. To just create more space, allows you to spread out more.
Question for you, Felix, right here. So, is there a principle in Hex, and is it something to maybe think about? So Wodach here is on the sideline as the disc is swinging. He's clearing space and basically creating a threat, making sure his defender cannot just stay there, and opens up space. When I think of Hex, I don't think of Wodach clearing. I think of him maybe just staying there. Do you have any thoughts on that? Is there, or is that already built in? Do you know what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like creating space for your teammates is definitely, something that is great in Hex as well as other offenses. And it is documented somewhere. I think in the movement decision tree, there's something where like if you're not going to get the disc, and you haven't just thrown it or whatever, then look around. And if you can create space for a teammate, then do that.
Gotcha.
And so what he does in this situation is he sees that Elliot is free, and because Elliot is free and is going to be getting the disc next, he's just like, I need to get out of there, right? Like, so it's definitely a very good thing.
This is also something we've been playing a lot of mini in preseason. There's I'll call out our good friend Rodrigo. What is his last name? Gold
Rodriguez, something like that.
Gold Rodriguez. This is a similar situation happened to him in mini where Elliot would catch it here, but Roddy would tend to still be standing here and would not have set something up quite yet.
And that's what I think too, like with the positions, but the flexibility to move around in them is like, you stand in the space if you're available, but if you're, well, and I guess maybe the discs moves, or you can make a hard cut then off of that. If they are tight on you, then you can make like a hard deep cut or a way cut or something. And if you want another look into that space, like, then nearby offensive player could like that. I think that can still be a good concept, even more of a spread out offense.
Yeah, it's like if they're giving you any space, then offer to the thrower, like to throw to that side or whatever. But then if they're marking you tightly, then take that defender out of take them out of the danger area. Or
I stopped it here because Elliot's about to get this off the sideline. It's interesting how often Truck gets lateral swing passes from downfielders versus other teams. And I think it does remind me of Hex. I definitely understand why people have said it looks like Truck is running Hex.
Yeah, it's there's definitely points where if they were, it would be indistinguishable essentially from what I know.
I think you know pretty well.
I guess. I want to see more teams like who are like explicitly running Hex to kind of see how they do it differently and stuff. Because like some teams do like Hex stack, we call it, where like they haven't applied the principles, but they have applied the shape, and it's a bit of a mess. It's like pretty horrible.
And that's exactly what you don't want them to do, I would assume.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. But I can't help but blame myself for calling it Hex. But really the principles of the.
I know. I feel like that's why. I actually think that is the problem. Like people, they hear Hex, and they get so in love with not even in love. They focus too much on a shape, and the shape is not the important part. The important part is the principles and like certain things of just like how you're playing, and also just figuring it out as you fucking play. Like that's like the important part. Maybe you should rebrand, Felix. Call it fucking flow. Just call it like flow.
Well, that's what you had on the graphic, right? 7 principles of flow offense is what you had, I believe.
Yeah, true. Flow's like it's so whatever. It's very general though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is general. Like maybe instead of flow, it's like I don't know, quick, fast paced. I don't know. But.
There's another option, but it's one that's been taken, right? Which is motion, right? Motion offense, and that's actually quite a good name, but it's kind of been taken. And
who took it?
Frank Huguenot.
Oh, fucking Frank!
This is motion offense. Just like you said, he was there 20 years before us.
That's funny.
We can still use the word.
Yeah.
I was like, you gotta cut this if I say Frank.
No.
Motion flow. Let me.
Run and gun offense. Yeah, just fire something into ChatGPT. It'll come up with something.
Yeah, we're good.
I think it's fine though. Like
locomotion.
Like
transit.
The name Hex, I guess, has its purpose in terms of it. Everyone's learned horizontal and vertical, and so when they were here in offense, they want to have that kind of like same category kind of thing, and it kind of helps explain a little bit about it. But obviously, there's all the
so there's some familiarity that allows people to adopt it.
Yeah. Yeah, but then at the same time, it's a bit
They
scary.
focus on
if
the
they-
wrong things.
Yeah,
How about
like-
wave?
Ooh,
Wave offense. Kind of tough.
fresh.
It's
I
kind of
still
tough.
I think flow's okay.
I like flow,
motion,
to
obviously.
be honest. I like motion. I kind of like wave, dude. Like things move in waves, you know? Like wave is kind of nice.
Yeah. I mean, you want to
Waves
move like
do
water,
flow. Yeah.
Waves flow. That's what I'm saying.
right?
The
wave.
Bruce Lee offense.
I think the wave could be kind of cool.
Yeah, we're gonna run the wave. Let's run the wave.
Let's run the wave. Let's wave him.
Look at Norbom here. What an animal. This guy is good.
He is super good. Holy shit. Blink. See ya.
Yeah, being able to just having in your skill set, like if someone's free, that you're able to just like give go with them until you're stopped, just gets you so
What
many
happened
yards.
to Dan Marie here? Oh, he really thought the deep shot was gone. I wonder
Yeah.
why.
That's the, you know, because that's just the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah.
I see him
knew it.
clap.
Yeah.
He was like, "Damn it!"
Look at him though.
It's all over the place.
This is pretty impressive.
No, it's sick. Boom.
Yeah,
Even though like Truck is the best equipped team to beat defenders like that, like this disrupts flow for sure.
Well, also if you're doing it by yourself, like this is like what Felix is saying, like this dude in the back who's just like chest to chest with fucking
Xavier.
Roy. Yeah, fucking help
Xavier
Murray out,
goes
dude.
Boom.
And then at least they got to throw it to like the farther away guy. Like instead he's just like fucking, he's like making out with A-Roy like 40 yards away from the disc.
Yes.
Look at
Or
him.
like the B ultimate
Be ultimate
defensive
making out
principle
segment.
is something that Felix has touched on, like help the helper. This is a great situation to help off, right? A threatening pass to the middle that's gaining positive momentum, positive yardage. The trade-off is you give up a swing, but if teams could just get better at helping the
Cascading.
helper,
Cascading help.
it just creates more and more situations that are tough to deal with. You know, we've definitely kind of, and I think that was the end of the video. I'll stop sharing, but keep talking here. At times, like I've literally recorded myself breaking down Mama Bird film or Bravo film and saying like, we're over switching here. And because we're over switching, now this person's trying to recover and this person's trying to recover. And then we get beat. But in a lot of ways, it's the wrong thing to say to the team because, I mean, it's correct because of the way that we've chosen to play defense, but it's wrong in that it stifles people. It's saying it's encouraging them not to help. And it's not encouraging them to like find the opportunities to help. Were you going to say something, Felix?
Oh, so yeah, it's like kind of putting the ceiling on rather than taking it off.
Yeah,
but yes, it is a harder thing to coach because it's a lot harder to kind of see what's happening in real time as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts,
and when it goes wrong as well, like there's that thing of like someone gets thrown to who's completely open, you know, and so then it's very tempting to like, you know, throw it all away.
Yeah.
But instead, I think like it's about getting ahead of the game and on defense, preempting switches and preempting poachers and like seeing the opportunity for them, even if you're not the one that's going to be doing the poach or the switch, you know, like just being heads up ready for that to happen so that then you can plan the next thing.
And I think it's like the main thing for like people is just like, it's not like there's one way to do things. And that's the point is like, it's not that the way now is bad or this way is better or bad or good or anything. It's just like, think about different ways that you can try things out and be open to, you know, exploring those opportunities.
Yeah, it's awesome that you kind of have a lab out there. You have like enough teams running some version of the things that you have put out into the world that you can see what's working and what's not working and pick and choose some of those things.
Yeah, I mean, it's all happening. I don't know how much influence like I've had on it, and I'm sure a lot of teams and stuff have got there on their own ways. But kind of there does seem to be like a paradigm shift, kind of on like starting to happen right now, and it's exciting to see kind of where it's going to go.
Yeah, it's matriculating.
Yeah, it takes time. I think that's like the big thing. Is it definitely takes time.
The youth love it though. The kids are all about it. So
yeah,
it's only going to take a certain amount of time.
Well, it's way easier. Like, I just remember I was trying to coach a team at like middle school states, and the stack is fucking dumb. Like, go stand in the middle of the field. It's like,
put your hand.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's fucking stupid. Like, I like this way more. Just like spread out, which we always say when kids normally start playing, which is like to spread out. So it's like spread out, try to get the ball, and just like figure it out.
Yeah, move the disc quickly. That's it.
Yeah. And then there you go from there.